A little after 7, we'll get tonight's planning board meeting started. Welcome to tonight's Westwood Planning Board meeting. My name is Chris Paff. I'll be chairing the meeting. All meetings are recorded by Westcat. Is there anyone else in the room that'd like to record tonight's meeting? Okay, seeing none. As a reminder, I'd like to ask you to please turn off your cell phone ringers. The agenda is available at the back of the room. The meeting will follow the order on the agenda. The meeting will be civil and all people will be treated respectfully. The format of the meeting will be when an item is called, the applicant will come forward to the podium to present their application to the board. The board will proceed to staff comments, and then we'll ask questions of the applicant, and then the public will be given an opportunity to comment. When the time for public comment period, the chairman will call on those wishing to speak to the podium. Once you're at the podium, please identify yourself by stating your name and address for the record. All comments and questions shall be directed through the chair. All people will be given the opportunity to speak, but in the interest of time and fairness, repetitive or off-topic comments may be cut short. First off, Abby, any changes to tonight's agenda?
Yes, you have on your agenda item number 3. That's the proposal for the Westwood Estates subdivision at 443 Canton Street. That's 9 Hedgerow Lane and White Lane. That applicant has requested a continuance to your June 28th meeting, which is scheduled to be in this room starting at 7 p.m. So the board will have to vote on that request, but just want to make that announcement if
Yeah, if there's anyone in the room here for that particular hearing, we won't be discussing that tonight. They've asked for a continuance. Feel free to leave. Okay, so number 1 on tonight's agenda is University Station sign request. Sign package for project-specific signage alternative continued for May 10th.
Good evening, members of the board. Paul Sincotta with New England Development, representing University Station. This matter was first before you on May 10th, and so what I'd like to do is quickly just review what the signs that were presented in what we called a supplemental sign package, and maybe try to highlight some of the questions that came out of the discussion from the last meeting. There were 5 supplemental signs that are proposed in the package. We had presented them as essentially operational type of signage and presented graphics and locations. There's a key plan that ties each of these 5 signs into the site by way of a location, and then it's supported by a Word document that gave more specificity on signs such as the temporary now open sign and specificity in terms of numbers of different types. So why don't we just quickly go down the list. The sidewalk directory sign, it is it holds a sign panel that's roughly 24 by 30 inches. It's located on the sidewalks. It's a movable sign, and that sign was proposed for the buildings, building frontages that are all shown on the key plan that are highlighted in green. Each building has a specific number that are allowed by this graphic. And the signage that's used in this sign is really to direct shoppers within the center from one end of the center to the other. So they're used as reminders so that if you happen to be down by David's Bridal, it reminds you that there's a Starbucks down at the far end. We use them as opportunities to also announce new tenants within the center. The second sign that we talked about is the Code of Conduct sign. It was shown in the initial presentation in a portable, what we call a Windmaster type of a frame, and there was a lot of discussion about that. And in your packages for this evening, as a result of the conversation in the last meeting, we proposed a different type of a sign frame. It's identical in form to the sidewalk directory sign. It accommodates a bigger panel. And in fact, it's manufactured by the same company. The one thing I will point out, and looks like Chris has one right in front of him, the handout shows the frame. It suggests It's a burgundy type color. It's intended to be the same black frame as used on the sidewalk directory signs. So then we go back to our overall plan. There's a parking directory and control sign. This particular format is used in the Wegmans lot, and supplemental to this, we provided a drawing. We had talked about the idea that we want to use a similar sign over in the Not Your Average Joe's parking lot to discourage people that may want to park in the Not Your Average Joe's parking lot and avoid paying for parking in the T garage. And our security folks have been monitoring that and have observed some of that. So in the package that you received yesterday, there's a slightly different text, but it's the same idea for half a dozen poles located in the Not Your Average Joe's lot. This happens to be the sign that is used in the Wegmans lot. The discussion on this was the number of those signs. So, and it's a two-part configuration in the Wegmans lot. The number on top reminds you of where you've parked in the Wegmans lot, and then each sign has a single panel that announces that it's private property, and it allows Wegmans to enforce rules. I apologize. I brought with me, I should have made the introduction in the beginning, so I'm really sorry for that. Izzy Shate is Senior Vice President with New England Development. He oversees the management of all of our properties. I brought him for questions later on some of this. And Bill Congdon is a regional manager for Wegmans. So Bill will help me address some of the questions and conversation that came out of the last meeting regarding the parking directory sign. Better? It's back on.
Okay.
We're live again. Can you, Abby, can you scroll down and to identify the locations of the proposed code of conduct signs? I saw a red dot
Right.
in the entrance.
There it is. I
thought it was on that
this-
screen.
It's-
on this one?
It's on the
Oh, the top one.
the
No,
code
it's
of
on- it's on
conduct.
that.
yeah,
Just
sorry.
scroll down a little. And Paul, can you,
So one of the other things that we thought that we would talk about tonight, as a result of the conversation from the last meeting, there was some feeling that what was initially proposed as the entrance to the center off of Harvard Street, the main entrance off of University Ave that brings you down to the plaza, and the north entrance closer to Gables, that those signs being right out on University Ave, where really customers are going to pass them in their vehicles, wasn't as effective maybe as bringing them inside the center. So, and I think there was a strong sentiment, for instance, this sign should be on the plaza. And frankly, it has been on the plaza in the past. We don't have any trouble with locating the code of conduct sign on the plaza here. The thought for this one, to make it a more pedestrian experience, is to locate it either in front of, at this entrance point, either in front of David's or in front of Michael's. And then the thought for the North Site Drive entrance is to likely put it near Building O, if not on the sidewalk in that Anthony's Coal-Fired Pizza area.
Microphone just went out.
The fourth, shown on this view, and again, it's shown out at University Ave, the code of conduct sign that would handle this whole east side of University Ave. The thought was, rather than right out on the corner of University Ave, is to locate it at one of the entry points into the Not Your Average Joe's parking lot, where really everybody that's coming into that side of the development would be both driving by it and likely walking by it. So I think that we could propose to modify the locations of the code of conduct sign.
I know you supplied the board with a picture, a couple pictures of a development in Linfield.
Yeah.
Hello? And they include a code of conduct sign, but I'm wondering, is this a preemptive? Or are you experiencing problems down there? I'm just curious if all of the behaviors depicted on the code of conduct are.
Why don't I let
It's a little bit preemptive. I have seen some of those, just being some of the activities being there, but to be perfectly frank,
So are these acts considered unlawful or just undesired?
I would say it's more it depends. I think it would depend. It's more undesired would be my take on it. I've seen if there's kids with skateboards tricks and filming themselves, going on and off the walls or using their trick bikes to do that. That's just something, first of all, it's dangerous for any customer that's walking by, and I witnessed that myself. So, again, it just gives us kind of it gives us a leg up to work with the local police department to enforce what we consider prudent rules and regulations.
Sorry, is that not?
Yeah, this one's not working. No, sorry. Abby, are there anything, I kind of jumped the gun asking the question about the code of conduct. I should ask, were there any other staff comments or?
The only other thing I realized was that I think missing from your proposed package is there's some wall signs on Wegmans, the hours of operation sign. Those are about maybe 2 feet, 5 foot, 3 feet, square feet or so. So the board should, review that as well.
So they were, should I shout
Oh, yeah.
or shout
Sorry.
into a microphone?
This one is working here.
This
Yeah.
one goes on and on.
I know there's also a large sign on Wegmans that's, I think, another conduct kind of sign right at the entrance. If I picture that.
So the Wegmans hours of operation sign was intentionally left out of this package because Wegmans is seeking, that's considered a building sign. And so that sign went up after the Wegmans sign or all of the signs that are on the building, Wegmans Pharmacy, Market Cafe, and the such. So that sign actually gets permitted just like the big Wegmans sign on the building itself. And Wegmans is working with the building department to get that hours of operation sign permitted. That's just considered another building sign, and it falls under.
Is this is the one I was, it's the private property sign.
Similar to, so do you want to segue into at least talking about the private property signs that are both displayed in the Wegmans parking lot as well as what's pointed out is there is one on the building?
Yeah, I've seen that. So I think for now, let's stick with what we're talking about here, what we just discussed. And apologies with this. And then we'll branch off onto that
Sure.
Wegmans specific later. Any questions by board members?
I have one question. So is this the drawing you presented last time?
This is, yes.
Do you have a new version with all the propositions you've spoken to? Like
The-
the relocation of the signs, all that kind of stuff you just talked
The,
through?
the
Do you
red
have
dots,
a-
the relocation of the red dots, no. And I think subject to a decision, we can certainly update this drawing to reflect that. What is, and what is superseded on this drawing is the code of conduct sign. You have a separate, a separate new frame for the code of conduct sign.
So maybe you're about to do this, but so you have a proposed plan which you've talked to, and now you have proposed alterations to the signs, the 5 signs we went through.
So the alterations are, are two things. One is the code of conduct sign. Abby, is it possible to scroll down? The code of conduct sign that's shown on this plan would be substituted with the one that the board received yesterday. And the locations of the code of conduct signs, those red dots would move internal to the site.
And then the other signs, there's no real alternate There's no real alternate proposition for their visibility or what they look like. Sorry.
Correct. So the current proposal is still the same, that the signs on the cart corrals remain on the cart corrals. I think that the board, again, wanted to visit the site and have some discussion about it. Bill's happy to engage in that discussion on both the cart corral sign on the reusable trash grocery bag, as well as the private property notice sign on the light poles in the parking lot. So right now, there's no alternate there's no changes proposed there. There's no changes proposed to the sign that we use on the sidewalk, the directory sign. I know that there was some discussion about the possibility that they may be placed in such a way that they're blocking pedestrian access. They're portable. If they're found to be not properly placed, then we will absolutely look at them more carefully and get them in places where they're not obstructing pedestrian pathways. The now open, I think, is fairly straightforward, right? That's a temporary matter, and again, back to the code of conduct, I think, should we agree on the new frame for the code of conduct sign, and we agree that moving the locations interior to the site, then what would be appropriate would be to update the code of conduct sign on this exhibit, update the red dots, sorry, and additionally, the material that is new and is beyond, it's beyond the view of this drawing, were the private property notice of signs that we wanted to install in Not Your Average Joe's. That's a standalone exhibit that you have.
Is that this thing?
Yes.
You want to speak?
And
Would you like to speak to that one too?
yes, so this is a dated version.
Is anything up to date up there?
Well, I don't know.
This picture is more.
Yes,
Oh, this one's more up to date?
I don't-
The dots on that picture are growing.
There were 6 locations, and this maybe was an electronic transmission error on my part, if I sent Abby the wrong one. There are 11 by 17s on the desk, so there are 6 proposed. They're proposed on the light poles. It's a same treatment as a sign applied in the Wegmans parking lot. The sign message would read here, and again, it's really specifically targeted at people that really want to use our property in place of the MBTA garage.
See them walking across every morning down there, so yeah, they're
Yeah.
out there.
And the thinking was that we positioned 4 of them close to the garage, half of the property figure, and that's where people are apt to park. But the final version of this plan also has one on. There's a light pole in the grassed median on the entrance drive, so really everybody is seeing that sign when they drive in. And then there's a second one on the light pole just as you turn into the Wegman and into the Not Your Average Joe's lot.
Okay. Just one more question, and I don't know if there's other comments, and maybe we can take some public questions if there are any. Was there a signage and graphics design done for this site?
When you guys do the overall design?
Was there a comprehensive sign package that went from the pylon sign or the one on the corner down to these operational
Yeah.
signs? No.
No.
There was a comprehensive sign package put together for project signage that related to the monuments, the pylon, the gateway signs that are at either end of the project on University Ave. I mean, again, really, this level of signage we view as operational signage. It's not quite stop signs in traffic, but industry-wide or industry-wise, they're viewed as fairly typical signs for this kind of a property.
I think I'm okay for now.
Takers on the questions, Mike?
I have a.
Half a mic?
So I guess my concern is that it seems like there are too many small signs, and I wondered. I went and looked at some other locations. I looked at Legacy Place and Dedham Plaza and a few other places. I did not find large code of conduct signs, but I was thinking a bigger issue is just that there's these small portable signs kind of clutter things up, and it would be, why not have more like kiosks? Why not have a series of signs that were like information kiosks where you could put whatever you want on them? You could have the what's opening now, you could have the code of conduct listed, you could have the directory, and have those positioned in different places and permanently located there. That would that way we could decide where the locations are, and there's no need to worry about moving them around, and it would just all be permanent signs, and you could put stuff on them as you needed to. In addition to a directory, it'd be a single place where people could go to find the information. So that's my reaction looking at that, is I wondered why not do something like Legacy Place has a number of those sort of directory signs around, which give a lot more information than many small signs that say now open or advertise for stores and all.
Yeah, I think the first thing we have to do is agree on the definition of the word directory. Directory, I always thought, tells you where the stores are, find your way around the shopping center. These sidewalk, what you call sidewalk directory signs, they're not doing that. They're just mini billboards. They're just advertising. That's something that, we don't want, besides the fact that they're portable, but a directory sign should be doing that, and that's what I've seen in all other places. I've never, we just shouldn't be calling this a directory sign. And by the way, we asked to see signs in other locations like this code of conduct, and what we meant was in other locations for other shopping malls, not New England development. So what you've done is just shown us one of your signs at one of your places, which really doesn't help us to see if this is generally done anywhere.
The Market Street and Linfield photographs that we provided is not a New England development project.
So those signs look identical to yours.
You're right.
Yeah.
That's
All right.
why we say they're industry standard.
Okay. So
That is not a New England development.
and then, but their sign, their code of conduct sign looks exactly like yours.
They thought it was a pretty good idea.
They copied ours.
They copied yours. Okay.
And Steve, the sidewalk directory signs are the same manufactured frame holder that we're using. They're directory in that they remind people that when you're on one end of the shopping center, there are retail operators at the other end of the shopping center. It's not a directory in that every location gives you a directory of every single tenant in the development. And we have one of those on the plaza.
Well, I'm all for directory signs that tell you where to go and get things around, but these are just advertisements, and that is not what we want. They're no different from sandwich board signs that you see now. They're just a different shape. The whole reason we don't allow portable signs is, as you can see here, they're all over the place. You can look, there's another one to the left there. They show up anywhere. It's impossible to enforce them because they could be moved every day. We can't have our building commissioner go out every day and look to see where you've moved the signs around just to make sure there isn't a sign moved somewhere where it shouldn't be. I looked at our development, and the signs were, there were some of them actually on the sidewalk. I did take some pictures of them, gave them to Abby, where the signs were, there was still plenty of room on the sidewalk, but nevertheless, they weren't in that section of the sidewalk. Now, you look at that, there are 3 in a row, and the fact is you can show up tomorrow and the sign may be there, it may not be there, it may be moved.
But this is not a property that we own or we're
Right.
maintaining, and this is not the activity that this is not how we're using the signs in our center. The board had asked to provide some evidence that these kinds of signs are used in similar kinds of projects. Market Street in Linfield is a mixed-use development, has a large retail component, and other uses within it. It's a Class A shopping center maintained in a Class A manner.
But I think you see what happens when you start and say, okay, you can have some portable directory signs. Before you know it, more start appearing, and there's no control over how many and where they are. So that's basically why I think all signs need to be permanent, which is they have to be mounted on a permanent pole of some sort. And the content really, I mean, if you can present something where you can show this kind of thing, it really, to me, it's advertising, but I won't push the point any further. And the code of conduct signs definitely should be permanently mounted. I saw them moving in the last, several weeks here. It was originally on one side of the street. Now it was in the middle. It was on the planting area. So that's reducing the planting area by putting a sign there. I think we just should settle on places and put them permanently where they belong.
If I could answer a couple of the questions. So with regards to the code of conduct signs, in our other properties. Oh, okay. Lean this way. With regards to the code of conduct signs, our preference and what we do in every other property, and most other developers do the same, is that we actually fabricate the sign and we put it at the entrance to the property, whether it's an indoor center, an outdoor center, wherever the customer will typically walk in to the center is where we'll post the sign. So when Paul was talking before about moving the sign close to David's Bridal, the sign would actually be mounted to the wall. It would not be in a sign holder like you see here. And we would do that in strategic locations, and you wouldn't have to worry about a sign holder for it. With regards to the signs that you were looking at that are kind of more the permanent ones, we do those in other properties. Typically, it's larger enclosed malls. We do it. We have outdoor outlet centers where we do them as well. Typically, it's a third-party company that provides those electronic signs. And the reason that they do it is pretty simple. They really do sell advertising, primarily outside the center. And it could be to anybody that's non-competitive. I mean, typically the owner would have the right to approve who they're selling the advertising to. But that's for the most part, that's a pure advertising play. What we're trying to do is we have a responsibility to our tenants. If they do well, then that's great for them. It's great for the ownership. It's great for the community that we're in. We're trying to avoid turnover in the retail world, and there's certainly plenty of that, as you read in the paper every day. We try to market the heck out of our tenants, and absolutely, and they expect that from us. And again, I hate to use the term again, but that is an industry standard. I mean, we have a responsibility as the landlord, as the management company, to try to market these tenants and make them as successful as possible. And so if we can put a sign down by David's, or the pet store or anybody else that helps Starbucks, that's a win for everyone, okay? That's very different than if I were selling an advertisement to somebody totally unrelated to our property and putting signs all over the place. I get that 100%. All we're doing is trying to help the tenants that are already within our center.
Wouldn't a kiosk do the same thing?
You want to show the
It would, and we do those kind of things. Typically, when we're going to do a kiosk like you're talking about, it's done in the planning stages before the property gets built. So we make sure that there's clearance, we know where it's going to go, we know that there's power run to the location. There's a lot of different things that go into it when we do those kind of electronic boards. Yeah, we do have those in other places, but that's always way in the early stages of planning out where a property's going to go. I will tell you that in every property that I know that has those electronic ones, they still do these more portable units, what I call the 22 by 28s, because the tenants provide signage sometimes. There's a lot of different uses where we can do that. The fact that they're portable, absolutely. If the building's 100 feet long or whatever it is, if we can move that sign to make it a little bit better for a certain tenant, then we'll do that.
Well, there's actually like 3 different types of signs at Legacy Place I noticed, and so
Yep.
this is what I was talking about, which is just a directory kiosk, and there's like a thing in there for a map of that's not an electronic sign
Right.
though. They also have the electronic signs, which those are like what you see in the malls where there's a
Yep.
so I don't think we were not talking about those electronic signs here, but more of these sort of attractive kiosks, which could, like I've seen them where it's 3-sided. You have a map on one side, you have like that kind of information on another side, and it could even have a community bulletin board or something on it. But it's a larger, more centralized display versus these things, which I get it. They're hey, you're at one end of shopping center and it wants to tell you that there's something at the other end. But I think we like the idea of more permanent structures that would kind of, it's not everything moving around. Like that scene from front of the Yard House was the worst case scenario of what could happen, I guess, with moving signs.
And look, that's on the management company. That's on myself. It's on my people that work for me. We have to manage that. We don't let the tenants, unlike some other developers, we don't let the tenants do whatever they want and run amok and throw stuff all over the place. That's part of our job, really. It's pretty similar when you talk about that the picture that you just showed from Legacy. It's not that different than what we did in the plaza for the the directory sign. That was part, I believe, of the permit process. Correct?
Right, that's a permanent directory sign.
So let me make it clear, we're all in favor of the businesses doing well here, and we want to do everything we can, but we just feel that a whole lot of signs all over the place in unpredictable locations, unpredictable appearances, downgrades the whole appearance of the shopping center, and I don't think that's good for business.
Well, we do make sure. I will tell you, we don't allow any tenant to do handwritten signs. We don't do handwritten signs. Everything is professionally printed. Because we're very cognizant of the fact that it's got to look good. We're not going to let, whether it's ourselves or our tenants, do anything that's not going to be very professional looking and an asset, both to the property and to the community.
Well, that one right there looks like almost like someone just pasted a sign on top of a sign.
Well, that's a shell.
Yeah.
And what we do is, in order to give ourselves flexibility to change different messages depending on what might be going on, the shell that you see, the orange part, is pre-printed, and the part that goes on the inside is done professionally when we have a need, depending on what it is. So we'll hire a printer and provide them the creative for it through our advertising agency, and they'll print up, they'll print it up, and we'll put it onto the sign holder.
Now, you observed the sign that I took in Boston with the code of conduct sign. It could be so much simplified. I go around, I've been to plenty of shopping centers. I've never noticed these signs. And I'm sure most people haven't noticed these signs because, again, I think you're just putting them up there to get past some legal phrases. Say, okay, we posted this so we can enforce it. But a simple thing like this, no skateboarding, no rollerblading, and this particularly they have large artwork, they call it there. No climbing on that, and no segways. I think, very simple terms and a very simple sign and a reasonably sized sign, it's there and people will see it and they'll understand these things. No one's going to read that code of conduct sign. It's just too extensive, it's too big, and so I think you really need to rethink that and look at something more like this. And again, it should be permanently mounted. Don't do what they did here, which is tack it on a tree. This is something you should never do. But I just took this example because of the sign.
I think all these comments we tried to impress upon you that while we obviously want every business to succeed down there, we don't want to see vacancies. How we go about this, the board is 5 people. We might have 6 different opinions. So I think it's fortunate that we've had the opportunity to have a month of seeing them up there. I don't know if this keeps turning off. I'm sorry. I would like to, I drove by this afternoon and I was reminded when I saw that picture of Yard House, Target has 2 very large signs out front that say now hiring, and it's penciled in how much the hourly rate is. It does not look good, in my opinion. And again, I'm one board member here. But it did strike me that it seemed like the manager of Target put it out there without consulting you, without consulting anybody. They needed to advertise that they have a job opening, and they just did it. So what has I went down with a very critical eye this afternoon, and I've been frequenting University Station for the last month. And what struck me was how different it is throughout the whole parking lot, from the Sports Authority area all the way up to Home Goods. And I see, we haven't even talked about it, at Target, there says video surveillance. We haven't even talked about it, it's on almost every pole outside of Target. I understand there's problems going on down there, but that sign hasn't even come up in this discussion. It just seemed to get put up, and it seems to be in Target red. I also noticed that there's, on one of the signs in front of Wegmans, a evacuation point, or something to that effect.
Right.
Quite high up, on top of sign, on top of sign, on top of sign. It's becoming a little unsightly down there with all of these signs just keep adding up. And that's why we have a signage bylaw, is to try to keep tabs on this thing migrating to an uncontrollable point. So I think that's what the board is finding. I mean, we're new to this, this is a year in operation now, and things are happening and we're addressing them. So I know, as far as I can recall, I don't remember the cart corrals being even discussed in the development of Wegmans. They kind of just appeared. I understand it's ordinary and customary to the supermarket industry, and I understand it. Target has some too. But then to see signs put on that further, it just seems like things are just happening down there without a whole lot of guidance. And I think the board appreciates this opportunity to try to get it all back under control, so to speak. We're not opposed to signage. I think the board needs to be reminded that this FMUOD development doesn't fall under a normal signage bylaw. We have the authority and the discretion to approve signs that ordinarily wouldn't be approved elsewhere in town. So the request for these signs is not, I don't believe it's out of line. I think it's fine to have this discussion. But the board needs to think about their position on each of these signs and come up with conditions if we're going to approve. I apologize for this thing keep coming out. That one's worth. This one is trash. Sorry about that. Yeah, that sounds different. Anyway, those were some of my concerns. I think specifically some of these things, this is private property. I'm looking at Wegmans number 9, this is private property. I think I agree with Mr. Olenoff. I would never read that unless I happen to be parked right under it. It's just too small. The lettering, it's too wordy. That's not why I'm there. I'm there to park, get in, get out. It doesn't seem to be doing what it's trying to do. I just don't think people are going to read it. I think it's just going to add to clutter. That's my gut reaction to all the things that have been presented. With regard to the other signs, I don't have as much of a problem as some of my colleagues here, but I do see some of the value in their comments about kiosks, more permanency, and the signage. But overall, I don't have a real strong opinion against the now open signs and things like that. Did I understand you correctly? The code of conduct would be mounted if they brought interior to.
My preference, I'd rather.
You'd rather mount. Okay, but we're sticking with this proposal for now. We're not altering this. Okay, you're flexible on mounting or
That's, to be honest with
standing
you, that's
sign.
the way we do it everywhere else, pretty much.
Mounting. Okay,
You mean mounting on a signpost?
no, on a wall,
On the wall.
Oh, on the wall?
the wall of the building
Oh, but that's just for,
On a neutral pier.
for the code of conduct.
Just for the code of conduct.
but that, I mean, like on a Wegmans or for any building?
In those locations I've identified, side of David Bridle or the Michaels.
Correct.
So you pick 4 locations, wall locations, and so that's what he would rather have instead of.
So where would the wall location on the park be?
I think it could work. I think it could work on a building down at the David's Bridal end. There's a lot of pedestrian traffic through the plaza, so I think it's better suited, frankly, on a stand at the plaza. Maybe down at the Anthony's end, is it Is it rather than near Anthony's? Is it mounted on the Marshall's Home Goods building? Possibly. It probably wants to be on a stand on the other side of the street, on the Not Your Average Joe's side of the street.
Yeah, I see, on a sidewalk, there is a benefit to the two-sided. You get it
Right.
as you're approaching it from either direction, as opposed to mounted to a building, you'll only see it from one side.
You know, Chris, just for clarification's sake, we talk about the Wegman sign, and I want to have Bill speak to Wegmans operations. Wegmans is in almost 100 locations, so they're accustomed to doing, to managing a property in a certain way, and they have reasons for doing it. It's not just because they have oodles of money to spend on signs. So when we talk about a sign on the one hand it's small and hard to read because maybe it's too small, to me that suggests a couple of things. One, that's part of the reason why there's the frequency, because you can absolutely read that sign when you park your vehicle and you look up at it. Maybe not from the most remote part of the parking lot, but you absolutely can take notice and read it. But yet, I'm not sure that that the issue is that they're big enough and so big that they're creating visual clutter. I think I think many of these signs didn't come to light until special attention was called to them. Many of these signs have been in place since the center opened. The Wegman signs have been in place since Wegmans opened in October. I'd like to Bill to at least
Sure,
address
that's fine. Yeah, no.
the signs on the car corrals and the signs on the poles.
Good evening.
Hi.
Wegmans has a no solicitation policy for its customers and its employees, and those signs are up there for that reason. Many of our competitors here in Massachusetts and also on the East Coast allow people to sell things on their right by their front door. We try to prevent that, and that's what those signs were for. So they weren't meant for you when you pull up and park your car. They're meant for somebody that might be bothering you as you came up and to do your shopping. The numbers above those, numerous times we have people come in, spend an hour or more in the store and forget where they park. Those numbers help the customers when they come out. The reusable bags, we used to put them right on the front of the building, right by the door. And we were getting feedback from our customers that by the time they get up to the store, it was too late to go all the way back to their car to get their reusable bags. So we tried to put them in a more convenient location for the customers so that they would remember the reusable bags when they got out of the car. So it's not something we're advertising our reusable bags. That's not our intention. Our intention is to limit and try to get folks to use more reusable bags and remember when they pull in that they take them out of their trunk. And I'm sure, hopefully you've all shopped at the store at one point in time and you get halfway to the store and you forgot your reusable bags. That's why we put them in the car corrals at that point. And we have the signage package that we have here at Westwood. We have 89 stores on the East Coast. That's the exact same signage package that we have in all those stores.
Okay, thank you. Did you want to?
I agree with the reusable bag signs do work. My wife has said she's seen people get out of their car, go a few car lengths and see the sign and go back to their car and get them. So it serves a good purpose, and it's a little bit large, but I think I'm okay with those signs. The question is, will they always contain that message, or will it change over time? Or
This drawing, Steve, says that that's what the message is going to be. This drawing
Okay.
also says that there's going to be X number of these signs on this stretch of sidewalk, X number of these on that stretch of sidewalk. I think the notion that this is getting out of control is unfair. You know, I would suggest go to any Target and view those same signs. There's video surveillance in place. Go to any Wegmans and you'll see all the same Wegman signs. When we talk about this property is signed consistently with other shopping centers that amass 500,000 feet of retail, I would suggest that when you're on this property, you don't see these signs because of the magnitude of the property. There's not a visual clutter, I would say to you, because it's tastefully done, one, and two, they're signs that people would expect. Certainly the idea that a lot of people would find it strange that hours of operation sign on a building would have to be a permitted sign. If that hours of operation sign were a sticker on a door then I think actually technically the bylaw says that's not a sign that has to be permitted. Wegmans is a 130,000 foot building. So their hours of operation on a very large building that spans, it is about 650 feet wide, I think, that building. So an hours of operation sign, and just trying to put it in scale. If it's 1 feet high by 2 feet wide, as an hours of operation sign, you look and say, well, that's a pretty good size hours of operation sign. Is it really taking away from the architecture of the building, the feeling of that center? No. It's done in great taste with good materials.
Yeah.
With the hours of operation sign.
Yeah, is that one even before us, Abby, or not?
No, but the point I'm making is, did anybody notice that there were, before we had this conversation, apologize for the tone, but before we entered this conversation, was anybody worried about the signs that were on the target light poles, wherever they are, that say that there's video surveillance in use?
Well, I noticed them, but I didn't think there were too many of them, so it wasn't that bad. There was one place I noticed they got kind of clustered together by one of the cots, and there was too many too close. But when the Wegmans had the sign on each side of the pole, so that it had 2 signs for the number and then 2 more that was really excessive. And on every single light pole, I thought that was very noticeable. Now
there was never 2 private property notice signs.
Yes, there were. There. When we first started this, there was one on each side of the pole, so there were 4 signs in each pole. Now they've been removed since we've said this.
No,
I'm not getting that old. I kind of remember it.
so then you're telling Bill that
They.
that he's
Didn't we
not
have
being
pictures
truthful.
of that? Didn't we have Well, did we have pictures of that?
Let's,
This is the,
But
let's
yeah,
moving forward.
there's one right there. Nora has.
I have a photograph from 2 months ago. It shows the 2-sided number sign, one-sided.
Oh, it's only one-sided on those? Well, that's how cluttered it looked, that I thought it was on 2 sides.
I think that there's a real hypersensitivity to the sign issue here, is what I really truly believe. Again, not to be combative about this, but truly, this center is not signed inconsistent with a first-class shopping center of this kind in vast numbers of locations. We could spend all evening debating personal opinions on what's appropriate number of signs, what the message ought to be, where they ought to be. It's, in my view, it's not appropriate for this kind of a development because the type of signage that we're employing here is unique to this development. And it's consistent with 500,000 square feet of retail.
Well, let's move this along a little. I think the corral signs, which shouldn't be called directory signs, just those cart corral signs, they should be called, if anything, cart corral public service signs, because that's what the message should be, some public service thing, which is bring your reusable bag. Those are fine. And then, this is mostly my opinion. I think those signs up there, they are necessary, but they should be limited in number. Now, how many do you need? Certainly 1 in each corner, so there are 4 signs total. Is that what you need, or you only need them near the building end, so that's 2 signs? Is that reasonable?
I think we need them where we have them right at the present.
Well, I'm not sure where they are now because some of them have been removed, so
These signs, Steve, are in the same places they were originally
now
installed.
there are now fewer than there were when I originally
And I'll tell you the
started
poles
this
that they're
thing.
on. These signs are placed essentially on a 120-foot grid within their parking lot because they're on the light poles. The light poles in front of Wegmans are every other parking tray. Each tray is 60 feet. Every other parking tray, we have a light pole. So every 120 feet, they're on those poles, and they are 3 deep away from the store.
But they're on every single pole, is what you're saying. I think
For the width of the store and 3/4 of the depth of the lot, not 100% of the depth of the lot.
so. How many? Can we just agree on how many you need? I mean, I just thought there were too many. That 2 on one end, 2 on the other end, and you're covered.
And why do you think that that's the appropriate number and that that number should be what Wegmans, who's operating this business like they're operating at 88 other locations, feel as though?
I mean, I've been to other Wegmans, and I don't recall seeing these signs at all.
Sir, it's the exact same thing in every store, all 89 stores.
I think that's going to their point. You don't see it unless you have a critical eye. I think let's,
All right, well, let's move on from that one. Whether we should allow, all right, 3 temporary signs, I'm fine with that, for 30 days. But I think all the rest of the signs need to be permanently put on poles,
so you're proposing
including
putting these
the,
on poles?
everything,
Not on stands?
not on stands, right? Or unless they have a permanent stand, in other words, you know, a 2-legged stand that's permanent, that you don't trip over the, as we saw, one planning board member said he tripped over one of these signs already. So they should be permanently attached.
Okay, so that's your
Yeah,
alternative
on
suggestion.
vertical, correct, not on stands, they should be vertically
One
attached.
of the reasons we don't do that is because during the winter in particular, we want to have the flexibility to pull them off the sidewalks so they don't get destroyed during the snow removal process.
And what about all the benches and the trash barrels?
So we don't.
I mean, it's the same problem you have with them.
These, I would argue that these are a little bit different. That's more of a customer amenity, especially the benches and the trash cans. This is something that could come and go, certainly, but I would just tell you again that from a retail standpoint, these kind of signs are integral to what our business is. And the tenants expect it. We manage millions of square feet of retail and do the same thing everywhere. Other developers do the same thing. Some do it better than others. I won't argue that point. But either we know what we're doing or we don't know what we're doing. If I can't manage that, then shame on me. I mean, that's crazy. If I can't manage, what do we have here? A dozen sign holders, if that. It's nothing. It really isn't. But again, the tenants expect it. And when a lot of this started and we had to pull some of the now open signs off, the tenants were livid. I cannot tell you the calls that were made to our corporate office, to myself, to our principals of our company, because they just haven't seen that anywhere else. You know, we have to do it the right way. I don't argue that point one bit. I would say to you that I think that we have been. Do things slip through once in a blue moon? Absolutely. But I will tell you that my property manager is there, if not every day, every other day. I mean, he lives there. Our security team is there all the time. They monitor it as well. That's our jobs to do that. And we need the flexibility.
Nora, do you appear as if you'd like to make a comment? Yes. Nora Locknane.
When we were writing the bylaw and looking at the original plans for this quite a while ago, we built in a certain amount of flexibility, knowing that there were signs that we hadn't anticipated that might come up as something that was needed. Since then, we have had several project-specific signage packages approved. The most recent, I think, was the directory sign. I don't see all of these signs falling in the same category, but some of them, I think, do fall in that category. What Steve's calling advertisement signs, what Paul is calling local directory signs, I find to be tasteful signs, and I find them to be helpful to the local businesses. Just speaking to that one particular sign and the now open signs, I think those enhance the shopping experience and assist the businesses that are in that development. I'd recommend that you approve both of those signs with conditions. The now open sign, I think the condition should be a certain period of time from when the business opens until that sign is taken down. Those advertisement signs, I think they should just be a specific number, whether that's 12 or 20. I think we hear from what the developer would like, and the planning board weighs in on what they think is appropriate. The developer and the store representatives know their business. We know the aesthetic we're looking for. So every New England development shopping center does not look like the one in Westwood. Every town does not have the same aesthetic requirements. They're different in different places. So while Wegmans might have the same requirements in all their stores. We may look at them a little bit different. So that's why it's before the board to see, to weigh on a case-by-case basis. That's why the flexibility is built into the bylaw. And I ask you to take into consideration the developer and store's needs and the town's aesthetic at the same time. I think it's important with those now open signs and the advertisement signs that they're located off of the sidewalk in the area where you're not walking. So on the pavement, but not in the walking area. That can easily be controlled by the building department with the assistance of the on-site project team. And we can work with them closely on that. It would be nice to have a little bit more enforcement on things like the target signs, which I personally have gone in and taken those A-frames and brought them to the manager and reminded them that they're not permitted signs, and they're right back out there again. So something like that, if we have commitment from the developer, and I'm sure they're willing to do it, to just monitor things and abide by the conditions that you impose. I don't think those signs need to be permanently located. I think there's some makes sense to move them around. For instance, during the high season of, preparing for weddings, you might want a sign in front of David's Bridal pointing people to Dolabany and K Jewelers. It just makes sense to have people go around, and maybe the signs move around the plaza. So I would recommend strongly that you approve both of those types of signs in the tasteful holders that are proposed. The code of conduct sign, I think makes sense, but a far more limited number, and only in the areas where you will walk up to that sign and be able to read it. I don't think having one on a wall is helpful, because I don't think unless someone walks up to that wall and reads it, the print is too small. I also would be concerned it would interfere with the aesthetic of the building. But there are places where they could go, and I think they're appropriate. I think having a code of conduct sign on each area of the development makes sense. I don't think we need very many of them all throughout, and I don't think we need any of them in a driving location. I disagree with Steve on the cart corral signs. I understand the purpose of them. I think that what trains people to bring their bags in is using their bags over and over. It becomes a memory, and in time, I don't think we'll need those reminder signs. So if we feel they're necessary, I'd recommend that you approve those for a certain period of time, and then have them go away. Those, as Chris mentioned, those cart corrals were never shown on the plan. They're tastefully designed. They match the building, and they're appropriate. I think that they had been shown, they would have been approved. If they had been shown as a structure to hold a sign, then I don't think you would have approved that at that time. And then the other signs for parking regulation, the ones in the Wegmans lot and the proposed ones at Not Your Average Joe's, I understand the need for them. They're a little bit different than the signs that advertise and help the individual businesses to get more business. These signs are more about keeping people away that aren't shoppers. It's a completely different reason to have them. In the case of the Not Your Average Joe's parking lot, I think the only effective place is at the entrance to that parking lot. Once you've pulled in and you see 6 other signs, I think that's pointless. Once you've pulled in, you're going to park. There should be one sign, and it should be at the entrance. With the Wegmans signs, I would say they don't need as many as they have. I would say strategic locations, maybe on the 4 corners of the area that's there. I agree. I think if we keep putting signs, it becomes sign pollution. It's a different aesthetic than what we contemplated. I think the board has the flexibility to decide what's appropriate, and I think they should keep in mind that our goal is to assist the businesses to attract more customers and have more successful businesses. I think that's the main thing that we're all after, and the flexibility was intentionally built into the bylaw to allow you to do just that.
Thank you. Trevor, you had
thoughts. And this is going back a little bit in the discussion to some of the things that Chris said, and I definitely agree with a lot of the things that Nora mentioned. One of the things that Chris mentioned was that there's an inconsistency from end to end of the development, and that's a little bit of what I was getting at when I made my comment about whether there was a comprehensive signage and branding package. That's a common practice for everything from a kiosk to a no smoking sign, that a development would have that kind of level of detail embedded in the design. So that's kind of corollary to Chris's comment, I think. I personally don't have a problem with the sidewalk directory sign, the movable ones. I think the code of conduct sign would be great as a building mounted sign or as a kiosk mounted sign, something permanent, not on one of these floppy, wavy things and that move around the breeze. Yeah, I think I'm fine with that. I guess I don't have a problem with the sign and the frame concept. What I think is missing from all of this is, first of all, an exhibit that shows us what you want to do. Like, it's not here anywhere. Like, it's a little bit of this, a little bit of that. Maybe this sign goes there, maybe it goes there, maybe it's this kind of frame or that kind of frame. That's really frustrating. I think also, like, there's a missed opportunity here where somewhere in this package, was it up there, was it in here? There's a sign for the no parking in the not your average Joe's area. Oh, here it is. Like, if there was a consistency like that for all these miscellaneous signs, the surveillance signs, the some of the other signs in a Wegmans lot that we're looking at, like the red one with the 3 below it, if there was a campus-wide consistency to that kind of signage, I think the board would be much less distracted by all this layers and layers and layers. So those are some things I would suggest maybe you come back to us with in another round. I mean, I feel like we could attempt to approve this tonight, but we'd spend the next 2 hours figuring out what the conditions were. And I don't think that's really our job at the moment. So that's all.
Any other board comments before I open up to public comments? Questions? Hey, at this time, anyone from the public like to weigh in, ask a question of the board? Yes, sir. No.
Just shout. Yeah, no, it's better for the green one. Steve Rafsky, 646 Canton Street. I just wanted to make a very quick comment. I first of all couldn't support what Nora suggested more strongly. Just to put a little context on it, I just wanted to expand one thing Nora said. We were for the record, I was on the planning board when all this was going on and worked very closely with the developer and the town side to try to get a bylaw. If you look at the bylaw, and I don't have it memorized, you will see that it clearly says that this board has the authority to do what is necessary for the development to be a success. We went out of our way to tell the developer that we would cooperate and try to do everything we can to be flexible on signs as long as there was a good business reason to do it. And also we wanted to protect the character of the town, recognizing that this is very isolated. So I just wanted to encourage you not to look at our standard bylaw for signage and focus on the need of the community, but also put more emphasis on the need of the developer. You have a right to do both, but we told the developer we would make sure the business needs were accommodated. That's all.
Are there any other comments? Yes, Paul, would you mind handing that to?
My name is Rania Kelly, 20 Blue Hill Drive. I've actually worked on signage guidelines for Massport, and I think it is a good idea. It's hard to get different entities like Target and Wegmans who have their own standards and probably have their own ways of doing all their signage, and who knows if they'd even go by a whole development-wide standard. But I have worked with like large entities like Massport's probably the biggest one, where there is a sign created, different sizes, there's setbacks, there's font and color choices, the way you frame the sign. So this is a precedent. I didn't know about this, but I think you guys are right to say they're being very vague, that there probably should be some sort of signage guideline development for you guys to review that has sizes, materials, setbacks, and a consistent character that the whole development goes by. I think that's pretty reasonable. Sorry.
Thank you. Thanks. Anyone else like to weigh in, ask a question? Yes.
One more comment, just to make a suggestion. So with the previous sign packages, you had just that. You had a package that laid out specifically where the signs would be, what they would look at, like what the materials are. You also recently approved a plaza policy about signage that's used during plaza events. And the way you did that was you sent, you gave your thoughts about how plaza events should be handled to Abby. we allowed Abby to work with the developer in developing that policy, which has specific attachments with all that information. I recommend that you do the same thing here, allow Abby to work with New England Development to come up with a very specific package that shows exactly where the signs will go, what the conditions will be, and bring back to you at the next meeting. I don't think discussing it any further tonight will get to a resolution.
Yeah, given the comments by the 5 members of this board, I would agree. I don't think we're going to reach a consensus decision this evening. So I think that's a pretty good suggestion for us to move on with this particular meeting. I hope the applicant thinks it's a reasonable suggestion. Probably need to get a motion to
Your next meeting is June 28th.
June 28th here
Well, we don't need a motion.
to continue.
We're
Oh, it's not a hearing, not a hearing. Sorry, my mistake.
Should we, is that enough time for them to actually redo, to do what we
Well,
just discussed, do you think, or is it?
I think they're anxious to get this going. Is 2 weeks enough time for you to?
Yes.
Yeah, I think so. Okay.
We'll compile into a single package, so that the revisions necessary to this drawing will be made. We'll take a look at reducing signs where we think we can reduce signs based on the comments that we received tonight.
And if you could identify the light poles on maybe that you're.
Nora said she thought there should be 4 of those trespassing signs.
Yeah, but she's not the applicant.
Right.
Let the applicant decide what they want to ask for.
We agree on that one. 4 was a good number.
No, we don't.
That catches all the points.
That's just Nora suggested it. You agree. Let them apply.
The number of signs in front of the Wegmans store.
Right.
We need to know the number.
It's their job.
Right. We'll bring back a package based on all of this.
Okay. Thank you for the opportunity to discuss. All right. I lost my agenda. Do you have your agenda?
Well,
Oh, here it is. Number 2 for tonight is Hogan Tire, 14 Washington Street, an EIDR and special permit for earth material movement, public hearing for the demolition of existing building and construction of a new building for motor vehicle light service use and off-street parking, continued from April 25th and May 24th. I should note that since this hearing began prior to the latest election, we are using our 2 alternates for the planning board as they have been hearing this hearing since it began back in April. Is that working? Let's give it to them. This is the only one. We'll turn it on. This seems to be staying on.
So we do the thing, right?
Testing.
This one is not worth
Good evening. My name's Tim Paris. I'm the designer, the engineer for 14 Washington Street, the Hogan Tire. Since we last met, we've made quite a bit of revisions to the plan. The basic, we had discussed at the previous hearing, you know, that we had looked at different configurations, but the basic configuration that we have here was really the only one that worked for the site. We have had numerous comments from the town's engineer, the town engineer. We got some from Abby as well, and so we've attempted to address all of them with this package here. There were, you know, a number of minor revisions that we did, adding dimensions, adding spot grades to the plan just to clarify the construction. The more major things that we had added, and I could probably, I mean, that's the basic site, and you can see it really hasn't changed since the last plan that we had presented. We have the 15 spaces along this side, a loading area here. We have one handicap space here. As we had mentioned during the previous hearing, we added landscaping in this area and took out the parking that we had in front of the building, and limited the extent of the parking. Here it is a little bit easier to see. The major differences is that we added a dumpster enclosure back here. It's an 8-foot high concrete block wall that will match the exterior of the building. It has vinyl gates on this side. It's large enough so there's room to fit a dumpster in there and have some space for the storage of old tires. We also, it was a concern regarding having the doorway on the side here because it faced the neighborhood, and so we've moved it back to the front of the building, which eliminates a glare problem towards the neighbors. There were concerns about the height of the building. We lowered the roof flattening as much as that type of roof will allow. It's just a couple feet shorter, down to 23 feet at the front of the building. We added a little bicycle parking space right there with a, what is it, the post and loop style. If the board prefers some other style, it wouldn't be a problem, but we just selected one that we felt seemed functional. Added a transformer pad on the other side of the building, up in this area. I believe my drawing last, it was going to go right in there. We figured on the Gay Street side, just to, probably the electrical will come from that corner anyway. And
Is that where some plantings are there?
well, yeah, this was all plantings, so we just took a chunk of it out. I'm not sure exactly how big a transformer, for this, if they need some sort of oversized transformer for their facilities, but I just put a standard size pad in there. We've attempted to flatten this slope as much as possible. We're cutting it down a bit from what it is now. It's still fairly steep along this little stretch, but it's a short section, so it's not going to be a problem for vehicles, particularly trucks, when they go around. We in the previous, or the first plan we submitted, we had extra parking on this side. That's been removed so that it's a loading area, designated loading area now. And then we provided a few additional plans. We did provide a landscaping plan, which looks like that. There's clusters of the plantings all around. I guess, like, for instance, this, I guess we'll have to get it slightly revised, like for the transformer pad where it's going, like you said, where some plantings go. But the basic concept, that's what it is. Hopefully you've all seen the photometric plan that was submitted. Essentially there's almost no bleed over. I think we had go back where, I think the only place where there was bleed over was like a little bit right here, like 0.1 lumen or whatever, the foot candles, whatever they use. But nowhere else did the lighting extend over the property line onto neighbors. I had also submitted a couple plans showing circulation for various trucks going around the building. In some investigating internally and talking to his distributors, Ed Hogan just got me something yesterday that regarding most of the deliveries are either what they called a Swift van, is that what it was? Sprint van, which is just it's essentially a little box, like box cargo section with a van front end stuck on it. So that's a very small vehicle. It maneuvers almost as well as a car. Or a 20-foot box truck, which is essentially the single unit vehicle. And I had submitted something showing this part up here in purple, that a single unit vehicle could do a 3-point turn and turn around at the cargo area. I had also given one that showed a semi-trailer, what's called a WB-40, which is not, it's a smaller than the larger. There's WB-50s, WB-67s. But my thinking was that for normal deliveries to a place on a town street, they wouldn't be bringing the big long haul trucks in to do that. And on that sketch, that truck can actually circulate, come right off of Washington Street, circulate all the way around the building and get back out. Obviously, they would then back in so that they could get into the loading area and deliver. However, that's not a standard truck that usually arrives here, so that's not standard procedure. To this plan, I've added this same single unit vehicle, which is the larger of the trucks that they normally would expect. Just added this sketch of it, just showing that easily maneuvers around. Obviously, when it gets over here, it would have to pull forward, back to get into the into a reasonable location so they could do the loading. To give you an idea of what's now proposed for the aesthetics, there's the new elevation. You can see the dumpster area with the gates at this end. The sign is at the front of the building. And it's not a lot more to see on there except for the general appearance of it all. Probably hard to tell that it was shortened.
You're saying the peak of the gable is 20 feet?
23 feet? 25 feet.
It used to be 25 now.
That was 23, yeah, 23.
So the last iteration was 25?
Yes. There was a couple items that I handled by just adding notes, some items that had come up from the town engineer, and that Phil had mentioned with regards to we're connecting a foundation drain into the catch basin that's over on Gay Street. The surveyors were unable to locate the outlet pipe to it because it's so filled with sediment. So I added a note that says prior to construction that has to be cleaned out, and they have to get the actual invert of the pipe, the elevation of the pipe. And if it's a problem, if it's higher than the connection that we're connecting in, then we'll have to work out another solution, either running additional pipe to some location or whatever, but without, you know, until we know exactly what it is, you know, we won't.
Where's the inlet coming from?
Where the foundation drain from around the building is going to be flowing into the catch basin. And then I assume there's a pipe coming out of that catch basin, since it doesn't just fill up and flood the whole street. I assume water actually makes its way out through the sediment and through a pipe. And I assume it probably goes out to connect to the drainage in Washington. For all I know, it could go in some other direction. But the intent would be it's just too full of sediment. And so once they get that cleaned out and find it, if it's you know, a foot or two below the sediment, then it won't be a problem. It'll be deeper than our pipe coming in, and it shouldn't be a problem.
So this, is collecting water that's just saturating the soil around the building?
Yes, yeah, the flow to that shouldn't be, you know, it should just be a trickle out of the pipe.
Because all the water is going into the system.
Right, surface water. This is just groundwater. Essentially, you wouldn't put a foundation in without having, you know, something to collect groundwater outside of the foundation. Otherwise, you could end up with water in the basement if groundwater got higher than the basement floor. There's also the testing that we had for soils for the drainage system, for our infiltration system. There was the location of the borings, there wasn't one very close to that. The elevation in them was for the locations that we had. Phil suggested that before installing the system, we do a test hole, you know, so when they begin construction, a test hole will be dug, make sure that we have clearance above groundwater before installing that system. If we happen to run into groundwater, I could redesign the system to be shallower, less height to it, and have to be a bigger footprint to get the volume that we need. But based on the elevation of groundwater in the holes that we do have, it should be fine. You also have to revise the operation and maintenance plan, which is something for the stormwater system, to add in twice annual street sweeping for the parking area. It's just so that we don't have a situation like you have in that catch basin there now, where it fills up with sediment. That's a rundown of the revisions and the additional stuff. I believe I touched on everything. All right.
Yes, I do. I think at this time, it's a good time to hear from our peer review, Phil Paradis. Microphone up there.
Sorry, I've been sitting too long. Phil Paradis with PSC. We've been reviewing this project on behalf of the town. We've had several iterations. I think we're up to 5 now submissions, and it's been a little challenging in that we make some progress but not completely. And I think you'll see from my comments today that we are. I don't see any major problems, but I think it could be cleaned up a little further. And if I could, can I use your pictures here? So I think in general, I'm encouraged to see that there's a dumpster enclosure. I think it's shown on the elevations. However, there's not a detail that I could find for the enclosure and gates. The project proposes to the existing building ends about here. It wasn't clear as to how far the limit of work, you know, how much more grading is going to be done in the street, and such like that. I don't know how much. So And I didn't see the note for the transformer pad. I think it would be difficult to put it there. I think there's got to be a certain distance from the building. So I don't know that a transformer pad can get that close to the building. The grading, the grading, just so the board and the grading of the loading area is actually about 2.5 feet higher than the finished floor. So I'm not quite sure how that loading operation is going to work, or access to the building through there.
Aren't there several doors along that side of the building?
I mean, there's a.
3 doors. One loading and 2.
Yeah, so I'm not quite, again, I don't know how that's gonna all function. The problem with the project, it kind of needs to do that because this is the catch basin, and we don't want, you don't want to back the water against the building, and drainage wise. The foundation drain, one of my colleagues actually at one point did a plan and worked on permitting for the gas station, a project for the gas station. I don't think it was approved, but there was an issue that came up that this, from what he understood, repeatedly flooded. So I don't know if that's true or not, but if this is the case, we just be careful that we don't backfeed the foundation drain and actually flood your building. So that was the concern about the connecting it to a catch basin that might not have an outlet, or an outlet that's not working properly. The soil test, yeah, obviously the system is actually inside the existing building right now. So, and it's lower, it's on the low side. So we would want to know where the groundwater is relative to the system. The lighting plan was provided. However, one of the building, the building mounted lights. The wall lighting is shown at 20 feet as opposed to 15. So.
Which one is that?
I don't remember.
There was 2 referenced on the photometric plan that they're on the wall, but I don't think it showed where.
I think it's the front. There's one on the front of the building. I don't know if it's one on the front and the back.
It's like the parking lot side and then the Washington Street side, and W2 lights are tagged to be mounted at 20 for some reason. And then W1s, which arch along where the garage doors sit, are mounted at 12. Not sure why that is different, but.
The long side of the building isn't that high, up to the eave of the building almost, over the garage bays. Couldn't be any higher.
I don't think we want them higher, we want them lower.
Right, well, that's why it's different. There's a lot of space. I'm not sure if the lighting guy was aware that we had already said we were gonna keep it to 15. when we did it. It's not a problem.
Was the photometric diagram down at 12 or down
We
at
just
15
need
or
less
20?
light shining.
It was done at 20. We want to drop to 15.
Right, so I mean, you want 10 or what?
Right.
Yeah.
These 2 are here. One over the front door.
So that's where
There's a gable.
Okay, and then well, would like, I know there's a 20-foot buffer requirement, and however, I don't think there's a dimension showing that, so I just want to make sure the dimension includes, a minimum of 20-foot buffer. The plantings, a fairly significant amount of trees are proposed here along the edge. Is it landscape plan? And we just want to make sure that they're planted right and done properly, that they're going to last. So we had asked for some details for how they're going to be planted, just to make sure that they are done according to. So I think that is it from my perspective.
Thank you. Abby, anything else to add? Staff.
I like to, the applicant did provide the sign package details. You don't normally review signage during your reviews, but that did come up as discussion last time. And the applicant did revise their plans to meet the bylaw. At this point, they were proposing a wall sign and a freestanding sign. However, that requires a special permit from the building department, sign permit. And then the applicant, since you last met, did provide the calculations for the earth material movement special permit. So what's before you is the EIDR, the Environmental Impact Design Review, and then special permit for the earth material movement, as well as the special permit for the landscape buffer from the residential zone. Now, they're showing the landscape buffer, improving that on the south side, and as Phil noted, you would want to condition that that's maintained at the 20 feet, although in the rear from the buffer, the residential zone isn't met today, so that would still be a special permit for that landscape buffer from the residential zone. This application does also require a filing with the Conservation Commission under the stormwater bylaw. The applicant, as far as I know, hasn't submitted that yet, but I think we were going to try to submit that for the July meeting, I think. That was our next available meeting. For discussion for you is what's before you for the waiver request is the traffic study, the distance for the intersection, the waiver for the presentation model. And then the applicant, as Phil summarized in his comments, the applicant did supply basic erosion control plan as well as the operation and maintenance plan, but the applicant has requested that a final plan be submitted later after Conservation Commission. The applicant did also provide the bike detail for your review. That it appeared to be consistent with your bike parking standards. It was the post and loop style. So based on these comments that we've heard tonight and on Phil's, I did prepare some draft conditions if you decide to move forward tonight.
Okay. That's everything? All right, thank you. I'll open up to board members' comments, questions for the developer or our peer review.
Thank you for your presentation and documentation. How tall is the current building? Just by looking at the pictures you provided and counting CMU blocks, looks to be about 20 feet to the peak. Does that feel right to anybody? Okay.
I would say 21 to 23 feet.
Sure. So no real change to existing versus proposed. I was counting off of the south lot. Yeah. Okay. I won't pretend to understand all of Phil's comments, but I would recommend you address some of the more serious engineering issues, like the condition of the catch basin or the outlet in Gay Street, and the grade issue at the loading area. That seems a little bizarre. I just noticed, this is a detail, but I think the silt fence detail is not one that the conservation agent really likes. I think she prefers the compost sock version of that. So just before you go before her, you might, or when you meet with her, you just might want to, before you meet with her, you might want to revise that little detail. And it's unfortunate that the lighting plan isn't quite right. I mean, the lighting designers should really have a grasp of the bylaws before they do these plans, but obviously the mistake is not that big of a deal if it's going to lower the thing. So I think
Otherwise, I mean, the building is an improvement over what's there, I would say. Certainly having a new building at site would not damage the damaging aspects of the experience on North Washington Street. So I think it's a decent project, I mean, aside from some of these technical issues. That's all.
Yeah, we just pass it on.
Just doesn't stay on.
You're on.
Okay.
10 seconds.
I was just wondering if you could address Phil's comment of the drop between the floor of the lower level and the loading dock seems to be 2 feet high. It appears that. Can you just address that?
Certainly. It's currently, in the existing building, which is way out here at the edge of the street, there's a drop. I didn't measure it, but I was there. It's more, I'd say it's close to 4 feet.
It's at least 3 feet.
Yeah, it's at least 3. And that's the way they, you know, the tires come off the truck onto the pavement, and then they're going to, again, about the same height, drop them or lower them down. And I mean, that's the reason there's multiple doors is, one is a set of stairs. I think it goes up and down. Goes up and down, and then the other side is access in over to the loading area where the garage door is. So it's a similar situation. We've actually made it slightly less. You can see this is the finished floor elevation here. I think it's 2.5 feet now. So that was part of the whole. They went with tried to go with a thinner floor thickness, and we could only, you know, essentially the elevation of the roadway that's out there governed all the other elevations for the building, because we had to match that, and you still had to be able to fit a doorway in and the hardware for opening a garage door underneath the ceiling, and then have the floor above that. And so that's decided the elevation of the main floor. But everything was done to try to squeeze the height down, but I mean, essentially the distance from the pavement right outside to the top, to the space needed to get the garage door to open, determined the elevation of the floor. But we were able to bring it up just a little bit.
So what is the elevation of the road, at the edge of the bottom of the door and the basement floor?
The basement floor is 136.85, and it's 139.2. So it's a little less than 2.5.
And then that's how much higher than the street itself?
Oh, it just minimal slope. It's 139.2. This is 138 contour out here in the street. 139 is right at the edge of the curb right there. So, you know, just, you know, one fairly.
So there'll be stairs in the 2 doors. There'll be stairs.
Yes, a couple steps
And
to get.
And the garage door will just drop off.
Yes, I believe this. Not.
Or a ramp.
Or a ramp.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to, at our last hearing, there was a lot of discussion about things like leaving the doors down to do things to mitigate noise for the neighborhood. Did you have any, and I know town planner is recommending putting that as a condition as well. Did you have any comments about that?
there was any technology, we can't have the doors go up automatically because there's lifts, if there's gonna be cars on lifts right inside the door. So there can't be any accidental, if the door ever went up when there was a car on the left with the hood open or something like that, you could have a real serious accident. So we couldn't do anything like that. We can't we will air condition it, so that will alleviate the need of having to do it. So I really don't, and then we'll also, I talked to some of the other managers, and just as the way of the course of business, the technician gets the keys, opens the door, gets the car, pulls the car in. It's not the way it works right now, just because of the setup of the building, but that will change, so there really isn't a need of it.
Okay, and just the last comment I'll make is I personally don't think we do, I think we should give a waiver on the traffic study. I don't think there's, this is an existing facility. I don't think the traffic study is going to show anything different.
I'm just, as part of the reading Bill's report, there does seem to be quite a few loose ends.
Which I don't think we need to go through tonight, but I think as this process gets finished, there needs to be some sense that the engineering all agrees and there's a consensus before we can actually finalize it. I think you gave a quick summary today, but I think there's 15 or 20 other things in the report. This keeps going on. With that, I'll move on.
So we did notice that the landscaping, you're losing a little bit of landscaping in two places. One's where the transformer is, and you should figure out exactly where it's going to go and show that. It'd be nice if you keep the landscaping in that area that's right in front of the building. Where it extends out on either side is more important than the landscaping there, but however that works. And then of course, the bicycle rack, the concrete pad for the bicycle rack also takes away a little of the landscaping that's shown on the landscaping plan. Yeah.
With regard to the transformer, I mean, we don't have a transformer now. I'm not sure we're going to need a transformer. I think there was a request made that we show a place to put a transformer if we need one. I don't really think we are going to need one. But.
And I just noted that on the bicycle rack, the orientation doesn't reflect the dimensions, the location of the rack itself. In the concrete pad seems to vary from one page to the other here, and it doesn't seem to be right in either one, so I look at that. You don't want to pour the concrete and get the bike rack in the wrong spot.
Just a couple quick questions. Tim, the condenser pad, would that be a good spot to locate the air conditioning condensers? We were talking about the pad for the electrical transformer. I don't see anywhere in the plan where the AC condensers are.
Oh, well, yeah, they have it for transformers. I mean, it was mechanical space.
Anything to keep the noise down from the neighbors, that would probably be a good
put
spot
on
for
Day
it.
Street side.
Right?
Yeah. With the access road to get to the dumpster area where you're gonna, are you gonna be loading used tires in that area?
No, that's actually scrap metal. That'll be, we just keep some scrap. It's recycled material, which is basically metal.
Old mufflers or whatever?
Yeah, we'll see. Brake rotors.
So is that actually a dumpster that you're gonna be loading it into? That's gonna be inside of that 10 by 20 area?
Yeah, right. It's not a full-size dumpster, it's a smaller dumpster. But there'll be a regular dumpster in there for trash.
Okay. It just seems like a tight swing to back a truck up to get to the, typically,
they pick it up against the
10 by 20, you want to go the other way.
They pull in those first, so they're coming around the bay side of the building. They pull in, lift it, dump it, back up, and drive out.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and the reason that the dumpster enclosure is so large, there was two comments about the dumpster. One of them was visual. The other was potential blowing trash. So by closing it in completely, you take care of the visual, it just blends into the facade of the building. but it also gives you secondary containment against a bag or something that might blow out of the trash. So it's really a better application than, say, a chain link or something like that.
I'm sure you guys know what's gonna be best for your business. Those are my only two questions.
Well, following up on that, given there's a 1-foot drop there, will that work for the dumpster? The truck's going to be at a tilt to empty the dumpsters. Is that all been worked out?
Well, yeah, there's the pad has a little bit of a step partway across it, so the dumpster itself will be fairly level. Dumpsters can handle a little bit of a skew.
The truck's on an angle
A little, yeah, I mean, as long as it's not
Handle it
too
without-
much, and I tried to flatten it out as much as I could.
And it looks like it's a 1-foot drop there. And 20 feet, more than a foot.
Two different pads, though. It's two different dumpsters.
Right, yeah, so it's like a half a foot from one side, or less than that, from one side of the truck to the other.
It's not clearly defined, but that's the way I read the plan.
It doesn't look like it'll work okay.
I mean, I think you're gonna have two flat levels. I'm not sure of the logistics of the,
Yeah. I hate to,
because you only got whatever
trash
those
truck to
things.
go up and everything spill out to one side.
It's not that steep.
Okay, I like the change in the entrance, getting away from the neighbor's side so that there's no signage there. I think that's a good response to the comments made last month. I did note on, it looks like you're putting what looks like a standing seam metal roof facing Washington. Is that right?
Yeah.
And then we're going asphalt shingle along the back end? Okay. I don't recall that from the first one, but I just want to make sure I was reading that correctly. And is that going to be green?
A forest green, yeah,
Okay.
a dark green.
Okay. And I noted in, I think it was Phil's comments, that the fencing along the neighbors, at least in part, goes onto a neighbor property. Was that put up by Hogan Tire or the previous tenant or owner?
Previous tenant.
Okay. But you're presuming ownership of this fence or no?
I mean, I think that it was discussed the last time, and I think most people said that wanted to just leave it there as a screen, so we were just.
Yeah, the reason I bring it up is it seems to be a fairly important aspect of screening, and it's a wooden cedar fence, is it not? It's going to fail at some point. It'll require some maintenance, and so that's why I wanted to clarify ownership of it and who is going to be responsible for this. It seems like it's a pretty important aspect of the screening since the neighbors want to leave it. So I'm asking for some clarification from you as to who is going to take ownership of this. I think it should remain up, but I just, going forward, if something should happen, I'd hate to see a fight between
Right, I mean,
neighbors.
we don't mind owning the fence. I think there's somebody mentioned that there was some bill putting against the back of one of the fence, it was on the neighbor's side.
Hmm.
There was some landscaping done or something.
Okay.
Basically, a retaining wall.
Right, which could create some problems with the fence.
Responsibility for that.
Understand, but you understand where I'm going
As far
with
as the
that?
fence goes, yeah.
Okay. And I know at some point it does go onto the neighbor's property. Did you identify that?
Well, that's the way it's shown on the survey, right? So the existing survey shows it.
I think there was a fence, I think it replaced a smaller fence at one time.
Yeah, I mean, and in the course of the replacement, they could have moved it over just a little bit, which ventured onto the neighbors. I just didn't want 10 years from now, 5 years from now, there to be a problem. Because it's an important, I think, aspect for the neighbor, those 3 or 4 homes right there. Okay, that was it for me. So, I know, Mr. Rafsky, you mentioned you'd like to see some things cleaned up. I think we're not ready for decision here with conditions.
Well, why don't we get other comments?
I know.
But my sense is, like, I'm only one person, it sounds like it's gonna be a while to get the conservation approval anyway. And it just seems to me there's just several open items here. So unless we can come up with a decision that covers how to address those. But
Some of these items are never gonna be addressed until we start construction, so we'd like to see, we'd like to get it.
Okay.
like your public comment.
Yeah, that was the next. Any other comments or questions by the board?
Maybe one more, maybe one more comment, just maybe more a question of.
It's on.
It's on, just turn it on. Thank you. I guess more a question for Phil. You kind of closed your commentary saying there's a few unresolved issues that you'd like to see cleared up. Could you just clarify which specifically? We have a lot of conditions suggested to us, and your memorandum is rather lengthy. I just want to sort of clarify, are there things you would like to see on the plan or adjusted or clarified prior to us considering an approval? Or a
Right,
vote
right. I don't know that these are huge.
Okay.
I think it's much easier to hold the developer to a completed package than not, but I just like, dumpster enclosure detail, limit of work, some resolution on transformer pad. Now, I don't know if they need it or not. Maybe it's the AC unit pad or whatever, where that's located. I think the town should know how much of the street they're gonna dig up, if they're gonna dig up any. If everybody's comfortable with the grading at the loading, that's I guess their prerogative. The foundation drain, if they found no outlet, they could put a sump and pump it out there. So, I mean, there are ways around the soil test. We're gonna just have to wait till they take down the building. So I don't know. There's a lot of planting detail, but I don't know that there's anything that would drastically change the plan. But.
I was rereading, your analysis of the latest comments, which was dated, I think, yesterday, and trying to understand kind of where the needle was kind of pointing.
Yeah.
I think that's the clarification I was looking for, so thank you.
Okay. Yes, Todd.
Just one more quick question. I noticed there's a standing seam roof. Is that shedding towards the entrance of the building on the corner?
It's, we shed off here and there, this side. This
Center entrance.
is coming, so it goes to that valley and it comes off at the corners.
Okay. You might want to draw in snow guards on the sides, just because the snow can come off those roofs pretty rapidly.
Will there be a gutter system on that? I just noticed on that valley, isn't that coming right towards where people were gonna walk down?
Yes, so the roof has to be collected to go into the infiltration system, so.
I just didn't see a downspout or anything.
I think the architects stated that they make their drawings look bad.
I guess correlated to that comment, this is more of a leading question, I guess. So right now, the water from the roof does what?
It just pours off and onto the pavement.
Right. And what's it going to do in the future?
It can be collected in the gutters and go down the downspouts and into the infiltration system.
Good answer, thank you. An environmental improvement, let's just call it, right?
Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay. You all set? At this time, we'll open up to the public comment. Yes, sir. I see a green light. Let's go with that one.
We'll go to shot. Good evening. I'm Sal Zinno from 6 Lull Street. And I think there were just a couple topics that I wanted to touch on that we discussed at our last meeting and at the prior 4 meetings. And they were actually addressed. I'm glad to see Nora here. She was around last time. And I think we were able to settle on a conclusion that the doors needed to remain closed. I'm a little concerned about how that would be enforced. Having air conditioning in there is great. If the doors are constantly left open, air conditioning probably ends up going off and the doors are open all the time. Operationally, that was a concern at the last meeting. We discussed, we I think concluded that the owner would offer a solution, and now we're just, I guess, seems to be as if we're just accepting the fact that they can operate it however they wish. So I think that's important. I think it's very important that there's some sort of automated means. If the concern is to not have the doors go up in the event that a vehicle is on the lift, then perhaps there should be an interlock between the lift and the doors so that the door cannot go up when the vehicle is on the lift, but that it automatically closes otherwise. Seems like a pretty simple thing. If they could send a man to the moon, should be able to figure out how to get the doors closed. The second one, I understand that the sign is not up for discussion today, but I think the size of the pylon sign has increased from the ones that I saw, sort of the interim plans. It's offensive and completely unnecessary. An awful way to memorialize the entrance to Westwood. The acoustical, I was glad to hear that we touched on the acoustical concerns with the compressors for the air conditioning. I think everyone knows that they're loud. Having them on the Gay Street extension side of the building would be great. These are all things that I'd like to see in the plans. As far as the elevation, it would also be nice to see the absolute elevation of the existing building on paper so that we can compare it to the proposed elevations of the new building. Just to be clear on the absolute elevation, that we're not taking into account any grade changes. It is, as I mentioned last time that we were here, Lowell Street is probably 15, 20, 25 feet higher in elevation, and most people's homes open to Lowell Street. So even on the first floor, you're peering directly down on this building, or maybe not down on it, but eye level at least. So that was just a concern. I just wanted to make sure that that was clear, and it would be nice to see that in the plans before approving anything. Same for the acoustical issues for the rooftop units. Some solution for the garage doors. And then also the buffer zone, I think, was something that we discussed extensively at the, not previous meetings with this go-around, but the meeting, 18 months ago or so. And the 20-foot buffer zone is obviously great. I think where we settled last time was that it would be a bit more extensive and not just comprised of some arborvitae planted tight to the property line, but something that possibly includes some earth mounds to get the elevation up a little bit higher, and then maybe some more dense evergreen spruce planted, maybe alternating back and forth, so that when they do grow up, they create a little bit of a thicker buffer that would block the view. I know arborvitae in general seem not to have that much longevity, so I think that's something I'd like to get some clarity on. I think the fence too. You brought up an excellent point on the fence. It really shouldn't be on the neighbor's property. It's probably going to present an issue for some people in the future, and I think that's something that should just be shifted, or maybe a new fence on the property line so that it's just totally clear who's responsible for maintaining it. The idea of having it be part of the buffer zone and on the neighbor's property just doesn't seem right to me. So I think that's all I have, and I hope that you'll consider these concerns and hold off until the next meeting. Unless these are all just easy ones for you to resolve tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
How you doing? My name is Brendan Fleming. I live at 10 Lowell Street. Again, reiterate what Sal says. I've been to not the previous meetings for these plans, but the previous meetings about a year and a half, 2 years ago. I guess I would request, is there any way to get a list of the conditions that relate to the neighborhood itself, as far as sound, buffer, lighting? Are those available in any of these plans and not stuck in on the different drawings in different areas, to make sure that what we have concerns with are addressed and that Hogan Tire is then held to that standard? Again, with the buffer itself, I know at one point there was an agreement to raise the pad of the plantings to a height that would allow the 8-foot or whatever foot trees that were going to be planted to be up above the 8-foot high stockade fence that is currently there. Regardless of who owns it, I think that needs to be addressed separately, but that was the plan. In these plans here, at the last meeting I was at, Nora, on the committee here, did state that the existing trees on the large trees, I don't know if they're oak or maple, on the Hogan Tire side of the fence, needed to stay, and that they were to be, in this plan, pruned. And I would just question as, can we get an understanding of what that actually means? Because if we're gonna remediate the problem that Sal just mentioned of standing on our first floor and being able to look directly at the door or the wall that's there now, soon to be doors, well then we're gonna recreate a problem for our second floor homes, who then now don't have any tree cover to block from any bedrooms on the second floor to see directly into any open doors or windows or just the general parking lot. That would be my major concerns there. The last thing I would like to bring up is, having not been to the last meetings on these particular plans, and I guess for the architect, is this building actually moved from where it currently sits on the Gay Street side, closer to Lull Street?
Yes.
Okay.
Not so much,
Not on this side,
not nearly as much.
but it's closer.
It's much smaller, so that it's scale on the other plan, but we're pushing it back on this side around 20-something feet, 22 or something like that. And over here, it's only coming back 8 at this end, maybe 10 at that end.
Okay.
So it's only getting.
Okay, so that, to me, that's what I've noticed in these plans, and to a previous statement from someone on the planning board, a new building is nice, however, a new building that's now closer to your property with the potential for noise, visual concerns, lighting concerns as the building moves closer. I know all these things are being addressed, but from an abutter, we have a serious concern with the buildings now moving closer. Their main operation of business is now facing our property. And I know at one point when Nora was on the board here that there was property value addressed. It was raised, as we do not want these plans to negatively affect the abutter's property value. I would like you to also take that into account. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Well, I could respond to
Yeah.
one of the question about copy of the conditions. I mean, once the board votes and when you issue your decision, that gets filed with the town clerk and then also posted to the website, and we send out a mailing to the abutters because this is a special permit. So that will direct you to a copy of the decision, or you can also contact us for a copy of that decision. So after the board votes, it gets written up and then finalized with the town clerk.
I think basically what the question was, any conditions that you can't put on the plan will be written in the decision. So it's the kind of thing about doors being kept down, that kind of thing.
Oh,
You
yes.
Put that in writing in the decision.
At the time of the last decision, as I recall, there was to be a town planner review of the final landscape plan to make sure that it was appropriate. So we did discuss whether or not there would be a berm. I know we discussed whether the existing trees would stay and be pruned. And I think there was some disagreement at the time, if I remember correctly, between the butters on Mill Street with one particular tree.
I think there's one very large tree that's
Right.
on a 25-degree angle over my garage.
Right, and the concern was that that tree was in danger of falling. So I think what we had said was that Hogan Tire should work with the town planner to establish a final landscape plan, and that could be a condition of your approval. One other thing I wanted to mention, I think I heard you say rooftop units, and I don't believe there are any in this plan. We now have a sloped roof, so all the condenser units then are on the far side, so that's a much better plan. And my only other question is the materials. Do we have samples, either an electronic sample or a...
We had it at the last meeting.
we had, so everyone saw that, everyone understands? Could you just describe?
I don't remember seeing a material sample.
We just have the
We can get them if you want.
If you have it, I think that would be great for everyone to be on the same page and know exactly what it is that they'll be approving. But I'd add that having a new building, I think will be terrific. I think it will be much more efficient, and I would hope that it would be much quieter than what we have there now. So the main issue is keeping the doors closed. You did make that a condition of your last decision. I'd recommend you make it a condition of this decision as well, and we'll enforce it as best we can. We could think about, I think in the last one we left it open-ended to see if there was a mechanism that would work. But Hogan Tire would agree to make sure that the policy would be such that the doors would be closed as business. Cars would be brought in and the door would be closed before that car would be worked on.
Can I just make one follow-up comment? There was a comment or a question about how do you enforce this, and the truth is, you're the enforcer. So the way it works is you would have a copy of what the decision, but if you see that the applicant isn't, if you see that the applicant is not,
The last man standing.
if you see that the applicant is not in compliance, then you would contact Town Hall, usually the building commissioner, and they will check it out and take whatever actions that are necessary. But it's not that the town walks by every day to see if a business operator is in compliance. So due diligence is usually pretty easy for abutters.
So it occurred to me that if you can't, is a danger of when the door's going up and hitting a car that's on the lift, then does that mean the doors have to be closed before you can raise the car up? And would that, depends how.
Not all cars have to go on the lift for service.
Yeah.
So if I understood, the biggest concern is that it could malfunction or something could cause the door to open when you're not ready for it. So I think we've heard from Hogan Tire that they are a responsible neighbor, and I think that's been our experience with them, that they are a good Westwood business and they intend to make this work. So you have my phone number. If you find the doors are open and that they're not complying, let us know. We do have enforcement policies, and there are fines that are involved. So if it's part of a decision that the doors must remain closed while work is being done on the car, we will enforce that decision.
If I remember from a month ago, one of the other things brought up was the manner in which the doors are opened. Right now, someone is on a horn, honking the horn, and I don't know. That's a logistic, operational issue that.
So I think that's done now because there are two different people. There's one that's the mechanic working inside, and then one is the one chauffeuring the cars in. And I think I heard Ed say that the mechanic will actually now go out and get the car and bring it in.
Okay.
So
All right.
that shouldn't happen.
I just remember that comment from last month. Yes, sir.
Just for that, when about the beeping the horns thing, we don't hit anything now, which we hope would be the end goal if this is approved and finished. I think we don't hear beeping of the car going around. We might hear a car starting, we might hear a tow truck dropping a car off. That is expected. The likelihood that doors will be open and we have to then enforce these conditions, and then we have a bad relationship created between the business owner and ourselves, it's not what we want. We don't hear anything now, we don't want to hear anything later. We also don't want to see anything because we don't see anything now either. We see a portion of a concrete wall. Those would be, I think, and I cannot speak for Sal, but he's my next door neighbor, and that's what my residents would like, I think, at the end of the day.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah. Yes, please. And if we saw these a month ago, we apologize, but this is the board.
I had samples of the architectural shingles, which they were heavy architectural cut shingles, so they're not just flat shingles. I guess one of my kids must have dragged them out of the truck. But
Oh.
what we have here is what they call an architectural split-face block. So this block creates a single width. I know you've seen them, but the color is impregnated and the block is actually dyed. So if you look at the plan, you're going to see a light-colored block and a dark-colored block. Ed, help me out here, would you? light colored block, was it this gray right here?
Yeah, that's the polished one.
So what you have is, where you see a dark block, it has a texture on it. If anybody wants me to hand this to them, I will. And it's basically impervious, it's never stains. It's, creates a single width wall. This is a home face, the same block, that's actually the stone, but after they make it, they hone the face of it, so it creates a texture differentiation in the building.
Tricolor.
And it's really quite an attractive finish. And those are the two particular colors that Ed selected to use.
Well, that's the band, the white is behind you.
Yeah, there's 3 colors total, right?
Sorry, there's a white, a light gray, and a dark gray. So that adds some interest to the building as far as not just seeing this big blank wall with the same color.
And what are the sizes of the blocks?
They're 8 inches tall, 16 inches wide, and you would use a complementary grout color to grout the blocks. But you're not gonna have a metal building there that's gonna have dents and rust and all of that stuff. This stuff basically looks fresh virtually forever, and it's a reason that they use it in this type of building. When somebody opens the door and hits it, it might ding the door, but it doesn't damage the building. And, you know, I know the sound is a big issue. I think Ed knows that. I know that from coming to all these meetings. I'll just point out one thing. Right now, you have a wood frame building with a plastic veneer. That block that you see is just a like brick master. So what you have now is you have a 12-inch thick block wall that's insulated in the block. And these overhead doors are 2-inch thick styrene doors. They're not just hollow metal doors. They're actually a high-art insulated door. So when those doors are closed, I'd be shocked if you could even hear a good one blow from inside to outside. So it is, I think, overall, the facade will have a dramatic improvement in sound transmission.
All right, thank you. Okay. So we have what Phil described as some unfinished, unresolved questions, but not, I think as you put it, not a big deal. Is that how you put it?
It's not gonna fundamentally change the plan.
All right, so the applicant is asking for a decision from us tonight. If we think we're ready, we could entertain that with conditions.
Before you entertain, could I just ask one more question, really, just Abby? And this kind of goes to Mr. Zinno's comment about the pylon sign. Is it true that the pylon sign isn't really up for grabs by this board? It's not really under our purview?
The planning board often reviews a pylon sign and almost never reviews a wall sign. So a wall sign, both are regulated under zoning, and the wall sign just requires a permit. You usually review the location and the height, if not the face of the pylon sign. That is something that you usually do look at.
Okay. I just want to thank Mr. Zinno for bringing that to our attention. I think that is an appropriate comment that this large pole-mounted or pylon sign, whatever you want to call it, right at the entry to Westwood is probably a little bit incongruous with maybe this a site such as this. And if the applicant could reconsider that sign, I think there's plenty of signs in the building. No one's going to miss it. There's nothing around there in that corner. It might be nice if it disappeared.
Yeah, we would be happy to put signs on the sides of the building, but right now, coming or going, there's no signage on the side. There's only one sign on the face of the building. And statistically, people drive right by that all the time. They don't need it there, especially coming, I'm not sure what the direction is, but coming towards where you go to 128 or where the neighborhood is, the building kind of pops right up on you. And if there's no signage in either place, we have people driving by us all the time.
So what are the dimensions of the sign?
Roughly. 75 square foot for the sign area?
It's almost 18 feet wide by 4 foot 2 inches high. Off the ground.
And what's the top, yeah, the highest point of the sign?
I don't know if it was on there. It can't be higher than the roof of the building.
It's not on this.
There is a height spec'd out in the zoning.
Right, it can't be higher than the roof of the building. I think that you do need some type of a sign that's out there because of the way the building is flush to the street. When you're coming down the street, you don't see it until you're right on top of it. But I'd recommend a sign similar to what we see in front of Devon Savings, where it's not a pylon sign, it's a platform sign. It's fairly low to the ground, high enough to be visible, and it's not offensive. So it's probably nearly as much signage, but you know, set no higher than, say, 8 feet off the ground.
That's fine, the base of it is.
The base of it
It's
is,
the width of the
in that
sign.
case, it's brick, right, it's the width of the sign, it has a base, so I'd recommend here you'd use the same material, or similar material to what you're using for the base of your building, and then set a sign on top of that, and put it out in your landscaped area so it's clearly visible in both directions from Washington Street.
Yeah, this is very industrial looking.
We'd be happy with that.
Great. It seems quite 18 feet, almost 18 feet. seems
I suppose sign companies are quite wide.
This room is
So how high would the wall need to be to be effective?
Well, you have to look at the site, so I think that's something also that you could leave to the town planner.
Yeah.
Have go out there and measure the site view, you want something that's visible at least 400 feet in either direction, so that someone who's trying to find Hogan Tire doesn't, you know, jam on their brake at the last minute.
But certainly we don't want the sign up higher than, I don't know, 10 feet.
No higher than necessary, I don't think 10 feet, I think 8 feet at the highest. Something like Dedham Savings Bank is much lower than that, I don't think that's more than 5 or 6 feet high.
So we could put a maximum anyway.
Why don't we develop the maximum based on Abby taking a look at the site, because it's the grade of the landscaped area that
Yeah, that's the landscape.
you have to take into account.
Right, could be blocking if it's not high.
So no higher than necessary to achieve the desired visibility.
And there's some telephone poles there or something on the corner, isn't there? Utility poles?
I think there are, so
That
you want to
could
locate the
come
sign
into
very
it, right.
carefully.
So can we come to a basic decision tonight, but leave the hearing open to, for the final plans and the final, layout of the sign?
I'd recommend that you vote on the application, but leave your hearing open in case the Conservation Commission, in reviewing the stormwater management plan, requires substantive changes. But you can still vote your decision and leave some things like the final stormwater issues and the final signage issues, the final
Landscaping.
landscape issues, up to Abby and Phil. So you say that the final submission to the building department has to be reviewed and approved by Abby and Phil.
But we would also need a condition. Phil, in your letter, there was comments about something that was deficient with regard to connecting to the catch basin. There was no outlet on the plan, so we would need a condition having to do with connecting to the existing catch basin. That's what I'm saying. There seems to be a lot of loose ends. So it's,
You should refer to the deficiencies as outlined in Phil's memo.
and curing them.
Yes.
Well, this is an environmental review, so it's not a special permit, so we don't really have to tie everything up, because I know that issue came up before.
You do before the building permit is issued.
Yeah.
Sir, you wanted to address a comment?
Point out with regard to the catch basin, and that I have a note on the plan that it's to be investigated if it's acceptable, if the pipe is actually there and it's in a condition where it can just be cleaned and then it will operate, then this is fine. If it isn't, a different design would have to be worked out. I mean, we're not gonna know that until it's time, until they get out there and start ready to begin construction and they check
Right.
it first.
And I think there's several things you won't know, I agree, until you get into construction. It's just that I just want to make sure we cover it. I think Nora actually gave a solution to that and have a condition that addresses all the deficiencies per the peer review comment letter. And that I think the things I would comment about are in the peer review letter. So, and that's a good suggestion.
Okay, any last questions, comments? Any? Yes, sir. Sorry.
It's like, I think the monument sign is a great solution. Just wanted to touch on the buffer zone before we move on. I think that would be one of my other concerns, and just wondering how we'd go about just ensuring that our concerns are heard, and especially incorporated in the conditions. And I think Brendan's comment before on the conditions was just if you could share the draft conditions this evening.
Well, sorry.
Unless those
yeah.
are off the table and you're planning.
Yeah, and one of the things we want to resolve is that fence, so do we want to have a condition where they're actually told to move the fence? Is it, the fence is in good condition, so it can be moved? No.
I'll address the fence.
Yeah.
The previous tenant in the other spot, in Hogarth Times Building, Advanced Energy, I believe backed their dump trucks into the fence that was directly behind, or directly in our backyard. I believe that's right, Pete. And the owner came over and said, we will fix it, and we will run it the entire length. So they actually, I believe, Sal, they did cross into Sal's property and did cross into the neighbor on the other side of our residence at 14 Lull. Where they put that, we didn't add, at the time, I didn't know who owned the fence. They just said, we will fix it. We knocked some planks off. It's rotted anyway. Why don't we just do the whole thing for you, make you happy? And we said, great, sounds good. We did not ask them to put it on our side, their side. I believe they put it right back where it was when they took it down. I don't know if that helps, if that was wasted time, but.
So how old is the fence?
The fence, less than 9 years old. I'd say probably closer to 5 in one section. There is another section that is falling apart on another property, and there's nobody here from that property at this time.
I mean, we could just say the fence either has to be moved or reconstructed. You can use any parts of the old fence that still are good condition.
Why do we want to move it if it's a perfectly good 5-year-old fence? I don't think anybody wants to move it.
Yes, we just heard that they do want to move it because
I didn't say that I want it moved or want it stay. I want it where it is. I'm just telling you how we got to this point with the fence and who owns it and who is responsible for it going forward. I don't know. It was replaced by someone who doesn't actually work in this facility anymore, and it was just a verbal agreement that we knock the fence down, we're going to fix it, and we're going to do the whole thing for you as a peace offering. More or less.
so the problem is when the fence needs repair or replacement, who's going to do it? Who's responsible? And if it's not on your property, are you really responsible for it, or what can we do about that?
I'm not sure who owned the fence to begin with. That fence has been there for, it replaced a fence that was already there, so I'm not sure who put it out there. So,
The encroachment is somewhat.
We can't impose a condition that they go on someone else's property and do work. And
Right. So maybe the condition should be, if that fence ever needs to be replaced or repaired, you're going to have to build a new one on your property. And which is difficult.
There could be a condition that if the fence is damaged and there's a request by a property owner with proper liability protection, they're willing, they could go on and do it. But we can't force them to do it without having protection and permission.
Right, but it's their responsibility. No, but it is their responsibility to have a fence there. So the condition could be that if the fence needs to be replaced, it needs to be replaced, but on their property, they have to move it over. So the question is, what you think is the best thing to do?
I'm assuming it was the neighbor's fence to begin with, and he backed into it.
You have any suggestions?
The fence is consistent across all 3 lots. It was put up by the tenant that was there. It's probably over a foot on my lot. I think the requirement for a buffer zone where there is parking abutting a residential parcel is that there's a fence and some certain plantings. I think we should maintain that and say that the 8-foot fence gets shifted. If there's a concern too about someone that piled earth against the fence and used it as a retaining wall, remove the fence to the elevation of the earth. I mean, I can guarantee that there's not 8 feet of soil there. We're not talking about moving a mountain here. We're probably talking about a vegetable bed with a little bit of, maybe a little more, but it's not, it's not significant. And I think the buffer is, especially knowing now that we're considering not having any automated means of leaving the garage doors open, I think that the buffer becomes more important, and something that I'd like to discuss this evening. Having some more dense plantings, not arborvitae, we don't know where they end up. Dead in 10 years.
But at some point, the fence is going to fall down.
Exactly. I think the fence should be shifted. It's part of the buffer requirement. I think it should be shifted to Hogan's property.
Now?
It's not
our fence.
But forget the fence. Okay, let's forget that the fence is even there. The requirement for parking abutting the residential parcel is a buffer zone, which I believe includes a fence and landscaping.
To clarify,
Right.
it includes a fence or landscape.
Or landscape.
It includes an impervious screen, so that can be achieved either through a fence or through densely planted landscaping. There's no requirement that you follow.
I think the densely planted landscaping, we agree to leave the fence where it is, take responsibility for it. If at some point in time it falls on somebody's property, they're responsible for installing their own fence. I think maybe the more important thing to talk about today was taking advantage of that 20-foot buffer zone and planting with something more dense than arborvitae. And that's, maybe that's, 8-foot spruce alternating back and forth so that they grow, so that the gaps are covered, and you do create an impervious screen. I think that would be a great solution, and I would feel totally comfortable with that. Probably address one of the last items.
Well, I know the issue of the berm had come up in the past, and I don't believe it's depicted at all in the current landscape plan. So thoughts like that, conditions like that need to be included if the board is in agreement with that particular condition.
Especially I'm assuming that there's going to be a significant amount. To build the infiltration system, there's probably going to be a great amount of soil removed from the site. So what better place to put it than a berm and not have to remove it?
Well, we do have an earth material movement. Excuse me, let's let the gentleman speak, please.
From the previous, my recollection, and I revised the plan, I initially had a berm. We ended up taking it out so that we had a lower area to collect the water. It's sort of a swale along that side in the buffer area with an drain inlet. So we didn't want to, the berm is going to shed water, all the backyards flow onto the Hogan Tire site. So by putting up a berm, the water.
Right, you'll stop the water there,
So
under the fence.
that's what we ended up with this based on, remove the berm. But we did have different plantings. This
Right.
plan was done by-
So the berm ostensibly was to raise the height of the trees.
You can have larger vegetation without the berm and
Right.
achieve the same result. You just have to have the correct
Yeah,
planting.
I didn't recall that discussion of the swale and that it was blocking water from shedding into the parking lot from the neighbors' backyards.
So again, I recommend you have the
So,
town planner
yeah.
approve the final landscape plan to make sure it's an impervious screen of substantial plantings that will keep their lower branches and really provide the screening for, a significant height.
Abby, you're writing fast and furious. You getting all this?
Can you request a significant height be defined as over the height of the current fence?
Yes,
At the time of planting.
yes.
Yeah. Okay, well, we've had lengthy discussion, and we've had a proposed plan of action for tonight to safeguard our decision with conditions, and as well as keeping it open for the conservation decision. So at this time, I think we need a motion. Anyone prepared to make a motion?
We need to make a motion to accept the requested waivers to not need the traffic study, the
Model.
the model, and is that a waiver for the entrance
Yes.
to be
Those
waiver
three,
allow the
those three waivers?
to remain
It's four.
too
It's a
close?
presentation on a waiver too.
Right, he said the model.
Oh, sorry, I couldn't hear you.
So what are the four?
think he miscounted. It's three.
Oh, three.
It's traffic,
Yeah. So those three.
entrance,
So I
and
move
model.
that we grant those three waivers.
Do I have a second? You
Wait,
count
there
four,
are- wait a
Trevor?
minute, there are
The
four
point I'm trying to
waivers.
make is there are four waivers on the list.
Traffic,
Okay.
20-foot landscape buffer.
Oh, the buffer.
Distance
two,
from intersection and presentation model. That's what Trevor was trying to.
It was the buffer zone as a waiver.
I think number two actually should be, that's a special permit, and that was included in the application as special permit, so, for the 20-foot landscape buffer in the rear, that's actually a mistake, that's not
On
a
the-
waiver, it's a special permit. So
Okay.
that's the three waivers.
Okay. So the three waivers, the motion is made.
I'll second the motion on the waivers.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay.
So I move, we also grant the special permit to reduce the rear buffer area from 20
It's not is it, is it,
To allow the existing.
it's existing, yeah.
Landscape buffer, which is insufficient.
Which is insufficient, okay.
Second that motion as well.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 And then you have a special
Okay.
permit for the earth material.
Earth material movement, right?
Right, so
We didn't talk
other than
about
our
that.
normal conditions for that, there's nothing, because certainly it's gonna come up and down Washington Street from one direction or the
Yeah.
other.
We're bringing in or removing, or both? I'm kidding. Okay.
So, I move that we grant a special permit for, earth material movement for the export of material from the property.
Net export.
Mhm.
I have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Now, make a motion to approve the, environmental impact and design review with the many conditions that we've mentioned so far.
For the peer review
including-
issues from the peer review.
Including bringing the plans up to what the, peer review has mentioned, those issues, more clearly defining the replacement of the bicycle racks, we replaced the requirement that the air conditioning units be on the,
Mechanical, all
Gate Street
mechanical.
extension side of the building on the ground. Any other,
Final pylon signs, final
and the
landscape
pylons, the
signs.
signs be modified to have a base, and a limited height and to be approved by the town planner,
And the landscape plan.
and what about the landscape plan?
Well, for
Oh,
giving
yeah,
latitude.
the landscape plan be, that the more extensive screening be provided in that buffer, to be approved by the, town planner.
And could you also
Yeah,
have a
we-
condition about closing the doors so that we have the enforcement?
Right,
of
so
it?
Well,
the condition
are we-
is
Are we
that-
incorporating these 18 recommendations of Abby?
And referring to the 18 that I prepared, that includes the garage doors remain closed at all times, except when necessary to move the vehicles in and out of, the bays. And then, these 18 included some of those outstanding items in Phil's memo, and then the other recommendations from the town engineer and, health director.
And I do have just one on your recommendations, number 9. If they cannot get their conservation approval, they're not going to be able, in time, they would not be able to do the work before July, August town improvements at Washington Street. So do we want to have a condition? I think it's that we want to coordinate it with the town and not put a deadline date, because if it's not, what happens?
Right, so this is, so this would have to be, coordinated with the Department of Public Works. This is, later in the summer, we're gonna be doing repaving in Washington Street. So that
We would very much like to get it done, encourage them to get it done in time. so we don't mess up the new pavement, but I don't think we can make this project efficient if it doesn't.
Well, once an area is repaved, there is a 5-year moratorium that's placed on road openings. So we would want to make sure that, that this gets to the Conservation Commission as soon as possible, and that the Public Works Department is aware of the plans to cut into the road, and schedules the road pavement at the last possible time. So I think that's coordination, but let's understand that if once that road is paved, there is that 5-year moratorium that requires the selectmen to approve a road opening after that point. So you want to do all you could to put in your connections ahead of time.
But what about our decision? Because we're not the street commissioners.
You're not, so I think your condition should talk about coordinating and getting all the approvals as soon as possible. I don't think your condition should prohibit them from working the road. That's left up to the site.
You're right, that's the street commissioner decision.
All right, number 3 condition, you say all exterior lights shall be shielded to prevent glare, and that might be misinterpreted to mean requiring shields, but these are full cut-off lights.
Oh, yeah.
So just say they shall be properly installed so there is no glare.
Do we need to read these into the record, or?
So,
You could enter that document.
Yeah, I don't think
it
it is.
So we have 18.
It might be helpful to at least
So we've had
mention the
18
subject of each.
conditions, which a lot of them have been mentioned already, but we have these on the list. So all of these and whatever we mentioned, so that's the most.
If there are any that haven't been mentioned, it'd be helpful to have you summarize them.
Talked about the test bed, exterior lights, garage doors closed,
And some of the conditions-
mechanicals on the north side.
Actually, you do have in here, trucks carrying fill, and that's really part of the, that's not of the EIDR, that's
No,
part of the
EMM.
EMM. So just move that one over to the other one.
You can write a consolidated decision, that's both the IDR and
Oh, okay,
the
yeah.
material movement.
Oh, why don't we, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
So we didn't mention the submission of a certified as-built plan after the project is completed.
Other conditions, submit a copy of asbestos inspection, hire a pest control company, portable toilet will be licensed with Board of Health. Applicant must submit emergency plans to meet Westwood Board of Health hazardous material bylaw. Path of the trucks carrying fill. Existing pavement on Washington Street will be protected from damage when loading and unloading materials. The driveway will be cleaned daily to prevent excess tracking of material onto the public way, and crushed stone entrance shall be used and replaced when necessary to keep dirt from being tracked onto the street. And a certified as-built plan prepared by a professional engineer shall be submitted to the town engineer and the town planner after completion of the project. A full-size copy, PDF, and CAD file, and a copy of this decision and final approved project plan shall be kept on the project site at all times during construction. I think we've hit everything now. I mentioned that was number, I thought I said that first. Test pit data for subsurface infiltration system shall be provided to the town
You
engineer.
did mention number 1 about the 15-foot limitation for mounted, well-mounted.
Right, lights will be no higher than 15 feet above grade.
And I guess there should be some comment about the materials that we saw, that there is some reference, since it's not on the plan, either to get them on the plan or to put it in the decision of what materials will be used for the building.
And can we clarify number 15, since our zoning bylaw needs that clarification, is no higher than 15 feet above grade at the point where the light is mounted.
Okay, I wrote
because the commissioner, building commissioner.
directly below?
Yeah.
Seems to be agreed.
Right, yeah.
Directly below is,
Saying it?
yeah, it says it.
Number 3.
Yeah, it
Oh,
says
number
it.
3? I'm looking at number 1.
Number 1 is to update the plans. Jill,
I think
that
Abby's
number
mic's
3
out
is-
too.
Everyone's mic is ready. This is the only one. that-
Grade directly below, good, okay.
Okay.
All right, that was a motion, I think.
Right, that's enough.
Okay,
That motion?
That's it.
we have a second. Any further
Let me
discussion
know what you're seconding.
on the motion? All right,
As reflected in the videotape.
all those in favor?
No one can hear.
Aye.
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 We have 5 yes votes.
So we need to
Okay.
continue this?
We need to continue it until, when is conservation?
Jay, I think the next conservation meeting is July, so probably until your, the next one's July 13th, so it'd have to be your
That's,
August meeting.
we got this coordination effort of Washington Street's gonna be tough then.
Well, that's just a hearing. Are you
Okay,
talking about the
you're right.
hearing? Or are you-
Yes.
Well, I think we have to keep everything open in case the conservation.
Yeah, so they have to
Commission
come back.
comes
We don't wanna
with
open it
something.
again.
We don't have to reapply, but, I think you can issue the
You
decision.
can issue a
Right.
draft decision.
And if there's some, but the
If
hearing
there's an
is
issue,
open
right.
until we know
We
the
can close it at
Conservation
that time.
Commission doesn't cause, so we should,
Yeah,
I hate to do this, but there ought to be some condition that, referencing that if there's I think we ought to re-vote on an additional point, that if there is something that comes back from the Conservation Commission, that we can address that.
You do that through a modification to your decision, and as long as the hearing's open.
we can do that at the meeting.
re-advertise it. So there's a standard condition that usually goes in saying that all other necessary approvals, state, local approvals are granted. And so that if one of those approvals requires amendments, then they come back with amendments. So I
Okay.
don't think we need a separate condition.
Right. But we should go ahead with the permit, since we approved it, so they can coordinate
Right,
with
right.
DPW and whoever and get that done.
Yes, sir.
They've already contacted the gas company, which is the major, delay usually. So, the whole, right, but, you don't actually need this permit for the gas company to just extend a line onto the site. So they can at least do the work in the road if it was physically possible to get the gas company up there next week. It could be done.
Well, but you
Yeah,
still
I
have
think
to connect sewer. Where's the catch basin?
There's other,
4 things.
It's in Washington Street,
Gas,
isn't it?
We'll order the service, size the equipment, we'll get that gas line put in, the gas company put in, we'll get that ball rolling right now. Second thing is we need to just survey the existing water and sewer lines to make sure that they're adequate. We're not increasing any flow or water requirement, just wanna make sure the integrity of those lines. Now, when they redo the road, I think the DPW is gonna have a clear vision of their water main and what tap, the age of the tap, so we'll start the discussion with the DPW. The third thing is, I think we should go ahead and empty that catch basin, especially during the drier season. Dig the sand out of that catch basin, find that in, just to reinforce. I'd be shocked if that isn't just a sediment filled.
Clogged up.
We'd like to dig that out now, that way we can put the drain leader into that catch basin.
It must be out there.
Be out of the street.
I don't think they need a building permit for the road thing.
no, that's a,
Yeah, so you're all set to do that.
yeah, you can start the process for those things, irrespective of it.
Yeah,
Do all of those things.
we're coordinating with DPW. Okay, so we're continuing this to,
I don't know the date.
August 2.
So, you making a motion to,
well,
Continue.
could I suggest we continue it to July, just, and they can be continued again, just if something does come up and they need to address it, and just if we don't continue it, then we have no way of addressing it, so.
Okay. Can we state the date?
I don't know what your
What
schedule
is-
is. July
I'll make-
no.
14th,
I got you.
12th,
I'll
7
make a mo-
o'clock
I'll-
here?
I'll make a motion to continue this hearing to our July 12th meeting, 2016 at 7 PM at 50 Carvey Street.
second?
All those in favor? Aye.
So the decision will get you, I'll write this all up, send out to the board for your review. We'll get that going, and then the hearing will continue on the 12th, in case there's any modifications after.
Do we need to close the earth material movement?
No, leave it
I'd
on.
keep
Leave that,
everything
that's open as well?
I'd keep
Okay.
everything open as well.
Okay.
So the motion was to continue both hearings.
Everything,
Okay.
EIER, well, yeah, everything.
Okay. Just want to make sure.
I guess I'm off duty, you're on overtime.
It's already over.
Working for free. All right. I think that's it. Thank you very much, everyone, for coming and your comments and questions. We appreciate all your efforts.
Yes, first item on the 20th.
Okay. It is boiling in here. We lost. We no longer have a quorum. I know. Next on the agenda, we need to continue the Westwood Estates subdivision hearing.
Oh, so I move that we continue the Westwood Estates subdivision of 440 Cannon Street, right lane. And
We have Davis right there.
Pitch Road Lane.
You can come back up.
To
Oh, is he on that or no? Are you on? I've lost track. Mike and Dave can't, but you can sit up here, but we lost Todd.
Westwood Estates subdivision.
But we have a quorum with Steve.
That's okay, Steve, you're good enough, go ahead.
Yeah, we just need to continue it.
Will we continue it to when?
June 28th.
June 28th, 7 o'clock at Cobby Street.
Second.
Oh, you asking for a motion?
He moved it. I need a. All those in favor? Aye. Okay. Continue that hearing. Okay. Next on our list is 3644 Blue Hill Drive and 124 Canton Terrace. Preliminary subdivision public hearing for a two-lot subdivision.
Dave Nusso's not here? Oh, there he is.
He was here. I saw him in the back. This is our only working microphone.
Thank you. For the record, my name is Edward Musto. I live at 36 Blue Hill Drive. I'm the owner and the applicant of the plan that's before you this evening. It proposes a two-lot subdivision on 7 acres of land, having frontage from Blue Hill Drive. Plan meets all the requirements for filing. The purpose of the plan is to obtain might as well be upfront about it, it's to obtain a zoning freeze, which was in effect prior to town meeting. The plan was filed prior to town meeting, and that's why we're here this evening. Thank you.
Right.
I gotta run this back to you, Phil.
Sorry. Appreciate that.
Right. So this is a preliminary subdivision application for the new members. A preliminary subdivision has a lesser requirements than a definitive subdivision. Preliminary and approval does not authorize any the applicant to be able to build or show what's constructed here. It's more of a first draft before the definitive is submitted, and the applicant has submitted this before town meeting at the end of April. So if the applicant goes forward and submits a definitive subdivision within 7 months, that's ultimately approved. The zoning that was in, it's not working.
Oh, thought it was.
That will get that zoning freeze of 8 years from what the zoning that was in place before town meeting. The application, what was submitted, did meet all of your requirements for a preliminary subdivision application. Then also the Board of Health did review this at their May 27th meeting and did recommend approval because it's serviced by Dedham Westwood Water and Town Sewer.
Okay. Questions by the board?
Do we have the plans, set of plans there available?
I think we handed them out at the last meeting, but yes, I have.
Here's
But, here's an extra set if you need.
I have,
Okay.
I think I have, yeah, electronic. So, any questions?
Did we approve this before, or
Right, this was.
We did
a
back in
similar thing before?
December, November,
Last May.
May? Was it that long ago? No.
And then that's when we approved, we approved Road A at that time, right?
Right.
So are you moving one of the lot, are the lot lines the same?
Everything's the same. The only thing that's changed is the date of the plan.
Right, the applicant submitted this May 2015, but never followed through with
Definitive.
the definitive plan. So the applicant has come back again to do the same process. This is the same plan, just updated with a new date.
So, Abby, can you go over the timeline again, so we're aware of all benchmarks that need to be hit?
So to obtain the zoning freeze, the applicant has to submit, I think, within 7 months of when this application was filed.
Which was April.
So by November 27th. And then that ultimately has to be, that definitive plan would have to be approved for the zoning freeze to be obtained.
And once that's approved, that stays in effect for
8 years.
8 years.
So that would be the zoning, that would have been our zoning bylaw from, it had the date of November 2015.
So you would have effectively 8 years to build the definitive subdivision?
Once approved.
Once it's approved.
You would have 8 years of zoning protection.
Right.
To build anything which was in effect prior to the adoption, prior to town meeting of 2016.
So we approved this same plan how long ago?
May 2015.
13 months ago.
13 months ago. So they have 14 months to, but is that 14 months?
No, this starts a new clock.
Yeah, this is, starting in April, it's a whole new project. But
So
it's the same one
they've
that.
given 14 months to file a definitive plan.
7 months.
7
months,
From
sorry.
the date of
Yeah.
filing of this plan till there's a definitive plan.
The last decision is over.
If that's done, the zoning freeze is effectuated. What it's freezing is the only section of the bylaw related to this lot that changed, and that's the senior residential development section. That section of the bylaw was removed in May, and in its place, we made amendments to the open space residential development section. So what this would do, if Mr. Musto comes back within 7 months and files a definitive plan, and if the planning board approves that definitive plan, then he reserves the right for 8 years to file under the SRD section of the zoning bylaw to request a special permit, which is a discretionary special permit, and this board can choose to approve or deny it.
So he didn't meet the original 7-month requirement for the file.
That's why we're here.
Which meant that he didn't have his zoning freeze from that time on until now.
Right, but the
now he's
bylaw
Not now.
starting
is
all
in
over again.
place.
He started
on the
in
date he
April.
filed this. So it's the
Yeah.
SRD section.
Before the town
It's
meeting.
no longer in the bylaw, would still be applicable as long as this
And he
freeze is
can-
effectuated.
He can keep filing preliminary plans
No,
as long as the bylaw doesn't change?
it's already changed. He's lost the opportunity to go under the old SRD.
But the original time period to perfect the preliminary filing, that's passed.
The first one, now he's up for number 2, and because of the timing of the calendar, this is the last shot under the old SRD.
So the first time it was done, we were proposing a change to the SRD section in 2015.
Yes.
So Mr. Musto filed to protect himself against that change.
And that
He
didn't
let that
pass.
expire because that change was never made. Then when you proposed another change, he filed again. That change was made, so town meeting did change the bylaw. But if the freeze is effectuated, if he comes back within 7 months and files that definitive plan, and if you approve the definitive plan, then the freeze is effectuated, and for 8 years, that SRD bylaw is applicable to this property.
Is there a clock for the board to approve the definitive?
Yes, it's 90 days.
90 days, yeah.
We follow the standard,
Right, okay.
So the clock for his 7 months started when he.
In April,
Submitted this application.
April 27th.
in April, yes.
right before town meeting. Till it goes till November 27th or thereabouts.
But it's just the ability to apply for a special permit. It's
Right,
not-
right.
It's not like you're freezing the underlying zoning. That has not changed. It's
Right.
just the ability to apply for discretionary.
Under the old SRD bylaw. Any other questions? Okay.
So what conditions did we have on the preliminary subdivision plan that we approved last time?
And then I don't believe, you don't.
I think everything was
usually
met.
give
Yeah.
Conditions on preliminary, you
Yeah.
have,
Just approve
suggestions, or, sometimes,
I know,
any waivers.
there was some work done in the street,
Do we have
right?
any interesting suggestions?
Anything creative we come up with?
Because the road was gonna be paved, we got the water line and the sewer line off of the public way onto the property.
Right, so
Okay.
that was a condition of last year, that's the,
Right,
'cause
and
of
so
the
that's
more-
because there's gonna be a paving going on Blue Hill Ave. Okay, I see a number of people here from the public. Open up any questions from the public about this project. Just questions.
What was the change in the bylaw from the last? So you said
It was,
the
it was,
it's called the Senior Residential
Yeah.
Development Bylaw, and we took that out and instead allowed for senior residential development through something called our Open Space Residential Development Bylaw. The main difference is that the old bylaw just set a number of units that the board could choose between 1 and 10 units per acre, and the new bylaw has a very specific formula where you look at the land, you determine what portions of the land are buildable, which are not. For instance, if there's significant wetlands or slopes or rock outcroppings, the board can determine that that's unsuitable land, and then that shrinks down the amount of land that can be considered, and in turn affects the density of the project. So under the old SRD, the board still has that discretion, it's just not spelled out in the same way. In the OSRD, it's very concrete. So that's the reason we made the change.
So would this property be developable under the open space?
Yes, it would.
Could
Yeah,
be.
the
Could be.
applicant would have a choice to apply under the existing zoning or apply under the old one.
It's more restrictive.
Any other questions? Members of the public? Yes. Could you say your name? I'm sorry, I forgot to ask you for your name. And that's,
Margaret Ridge. What do you plan to build? On with respect,
if, I'm sorry, the question should come to the board here. I understand. What we're here to discuss right now is his preliminary subdivision plan, and that includes basically the road as depicted. We don't have it up there. So that's, he's not obligated to tell us everything at this point. That's the nature of the preliminary subdivision. In 7 months, and he needs to come up with the answer to your question. Yes, there will, or he will, or this will expire and he will lose his zoning freeze, as he aptly put it. So that's basically, that's why we don't have much to ask of him, because we've already heard all of this a year ago and we've gone through all of this. And so nothing has changed except he's just restarting the clock. And this is the last time he can restart the clock, given how events of the town meeting happened. So,
are there any rules as to what can be built?
yeah, there's, yeah, it's just all of our zoning bylaws come into effect. He's ostensibly, looking to freeze in an old senior residential development bylaw, which is no longer existing for any other developer who wants to come to town. They can build it under a different bylaw, So it's, as Ms. Locknane indicated, it's a different approach to seemingly the same project, which gives the board a little bit more direction. 55 and older community, generally speaking, is the senior residential development. Age-restricted housing is what it's called, where one member of the home needs to be at least 55 years or older. One homeowner, one owner, it doesn't have to be an owner, does it? One resident, right.
So it will be a multi-unit.
That's the nature of that type of development, yes. He's not obligated to build that if he decides otherwise, but this would lock him in for 7 months to come up with a plan. Request us, right, to review it. It's not a guarantee. He needs to come up with a plan that we approve. And that starts, he has to do that before Thanksgiving time, basically.
Before Thanksgiving, he has to come up with just a definitive
Right.
subdivision for the 2 lots.
Right.
But within 8 years, he could come up with a senior residential development plan. So he doesn't have to show you the senior plan until he's ready, and that could be up to 8 years from there.
I think it's pretty evident that I plan on submitting the definitive plan before the deadline, 7 months from the submission of the preliminary plan. And to also submit the alternative plan, the intended plan for senior development at some soon future date, preferably. I think sequentially we'd have to submit it, procedurally we'd have to submit it after the approval of the definitive plan.
Yeah.
Would there be any flexibility for submitting the SRD plan contemporaneously with the definitive plan? Would you prefer to see the definitive plan process carried out and then submit the SRD plan?
That's the only way you could do it.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of a way you could.
You don't have a right to submit it, and we can't accept the application as a complete application unless
We go the old method,
effectuated
the new
freeze.
method.
You can submit plans to Abby to look at, but she
Sure.
can't bring it before the board until.
And that would be nice if I could sit with Abby to discuss a couple of other issues dealing with this property.
Okay. Any other questions? Yes, sir. If you could name and address, please.
Live on 47 Blue Hill Drive.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry about my language, maybe it's not perfect English.
Right.
But I have another property in Roslindale. We moved 2 years ago, we bought the house. The reason to get better neighborhood and better school system. I have 3 children. And when I heard about my neighbor is gonna build 3 nice houses, we said, that's fine, it's okay. But recently I heard he's gonna build a center for elderly people, which is gonna affect my house completely, because the road is gonna open is exactly across from my house. And the minute my wife heard about that plan, she decided to move again. We miss something in Rosendale. I cannot have my kids driving by here. We miss to keep them in the neighborhood playing safely. But the way it's gonna happen by opening that road and have that elderly or center for elderly people, I believe it's gonna be too much traffic and it's not good for the neighborhood.
Well, he is required, any development he does it's a special permit by the board here. If the board feels it's too much traffic for the neighborhood, then he'll be asked to pare it down to a smaller sized project. He's not able to build whatever he wants. It has to be approved by this 5-member board. So he is within his right. He owns the land. He is able to develop the land with the permission of the board. So we can't tell him, no, you can't develop your land because some of the neighbors aren't going to like it. And whether or not it adversely affects your property value, we really, we can't say definitively or not. Blue Hill Ave was recently made into a dead-end street.
Blue Hill Drive.
Blue Hill Drive, sorry, what did I say? Avenue, sorry, my apologies, didn't, yeah, I understand, I know. So it could be argued that that increased the value of the home and cut away a lot of the cut-through traffic that was going down to the train station and the project. So how many units are gonna be in this remains to be seen. There's a lot of questions. But I believe that road that we're talking about would be a in and out. It's not a cut through. It's just an access road into these units, and he's restricted to 500 feet for safety reasons from our fire chief. And there are other ways possibly around that that the board could consider. But generally speaking, it's not going to be a massive, 300 house subdivision being built across the street from your house. But he is entitled to look into developing it. I'm sorry if you think your property is going to lose value, but
Just because for my kids' safety.
yeah,
That's the reason I moved to Westwood.
I understand. And again, it could be said that a year ago, Blue Hill Drive had a lot more cars on it.
I know the reason after they told me they're gonna close the
Yeah, I understand.
I decided to buy the house.
Right. I can't answer all of your concerns with regard to the safety. We don't do anything that we think is going to create an unsafe environment in the town. If we think safety is a concern, then we bring that up to the forefront of all the discussions. Simply adding some cars doesn't always make things unsafe. If it's done properly, it can be done safely. So we look at things like a traffic study and how many trips are going to be added to Blue Hill Drive in and out. So we consider all of those things and more when we look at a project. So we're not there yet. We will be maybe in 7 months or 6 months at this point.
Another thing they maybe should be aware of, if there's a senior residential development built here, where the road A is not necessarily where the actual road will be, could be moved.
As long as he keeps setbacks.
Yeah, as long as he has the other setbacks and whatnot, it doesn't have to be where it says Road A now.
I think I saw a hand up, yes.
If 3 houses are built, I feel like, traffic is not gonna change. The development is built, traffic obviously is gonna go up. I also worry about senior drivers. I mean, my own grandfather took an exit the wrong direction on 128 when this closed on. Thank goodness he didn't. So I do worry about senior drivers and, an increase in more than 3 residences. And one of the problems with Blue Hill Drive is there's no sidewalks. And there's a lot of children, very young children under the age of 10, between Canton and where the street he's gonna propose is, almost every single house except his has children under 10. So that's a big concern.
I would just remind you that in SRD, it's 55 and older. It's not necessarily 85, 95.
But also volume of traffic.
I understand. And again, we all of those things are considered. Everything would have to be, he would need to submit to a lot of information being put forth to our board for consideration of the project, so.
Yeah, because before Blue Hill was closed off, it was actually very scary and it was a big concern for all the families with kids because people were speeding by. An increase of traffic just, with so many young children.
Thank you. Hi.
What's the next date we need to keep in mind is?
I'm sorry, can you say your name and address?
Rose Crane, 50 Blue Hill Drive.
Thank you.
So what's the next date we should keep in mind for definitive plan? You said no.
Well, he has up until then. He could submit it next week. But he has up until then, and he's made it clear he intends to. So I think you just need to, it'll be posted on the town website.
And that will also
Planning.
be a new public hearing, so that will be a new, notice that will go out to abutters and into the newspaper.
Okay.
That will be a more complete, submission, than what the board has for this first review.
So the abutters have individual notice to
Abutters and abutters to abutters within 300 feet for, that application when it's submitted.
So you get a letter, in postal
With the
letter.
new, meeting date with the planning board.
Right, but it'll also be on the town website, and you can, is it part of listserv?
Yes.
So if you sign up for that, it'll generate information to you each Sunday night? Is that Sunday night?
A list of all the meetings in town.
Right, including the planning board meetings.
So go on the town website, sign up for the listserv, and you'll hear about every agenda for every.
Right, so if you want to just keep an eye out for when this comes up again, that's a way to do it. If you're not within 300 feet of the properties being discussed.
Right, but it's, in this case, it's every house, the length of Blue Hill Drive from Canton Street to the corner.
No.
Curve.
These people aren't 300
Have they cross the street
from these? It doesn't matter. They'll,
No. These people are butters because of the property is.
Oh, and they're butters of
across the
butters.
street, Yeah,
okay,
so it's everyone on the street.
yeah. So everyone will get a notice in the mail. Hey, any other questions from the public? Comments? Okay. So, ready for a motion?
So I.
No, you have more questions?
This is a question I probably know the answer to. Existing building to be demolished or relocated, I take it that hasn't happened yet?
Hasn't happened yet.
I think that's the nature of 2B.
I'll be homeless if I do that.
Okay. Do you want to make a motion?
No.
No, you don't. Okay, do I have a motion?
No one's gonna make a motion?
I can't make a motion.
I'm working on it.
Yeah, I could ask another question, like, so,
Yeah.
if I understand this, it's just to, if we're approving the division of the property, into these lots, and so the only way we could reject this would be if this was ridiculous, you know, if it was like a 10 by 10.
If it went against the bylaw, the zoning.
Yeah,
And we went through this a year ago, that it complies,
Yeah.
and
we've
nothing
already-
has been altered.
Nothing has changed, so if we were to say, oh, we don't like this, and vote it down, then the
It'd be-
evidence of what you did last year, there's like total conflict.
Yes.
So somebody screwed up.
We don't
So-
have, we
Because
don't
we're
have
not considering,
grounds to,
we're not considering like.
What's going to be built.
What's gonna be built.
No,
We're just considering.
we're not
whether-
allowed to.
whether this, what's on this paper is.
Right.
Is.
Does it follow our bylaws?
Yes.
And if I could add to that, even if you chose to deny the preliminary plan, you can still file a definitive plan in 7 months and effectuate the zoning freeze, so. So it really doesn't matter if you approve it or deny
Yeah,
it.
we can
It's
get-
just a waste of time for you
Yeah,
to
we
deny
can
it.
move it. Stop wasting our time.
So,
I'll make a motion to approve the Blue Hill Drive Canton Terrace preliminary subdivision.
do I have a second?
I'll second the motion.
Any more discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 It's 5. You ready to close it?
I'll make a motion to close the hearing for the preliminary subdivision, Blueville Drive and Canton Terrace.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, folks.
Good night. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for sitting through.
Oh.
Obviously, we all care about
Yeah.
planning boards. Thank you for reassuring us. I think that's why we really wanted to be here as we're falling asleep.
I understand.
Everybody's falling asleep. So thank you so much.
Thank you for coming.
You're welcome. Good night.
Good night. Okay. Okay. Westwood Estates. Abby, do we have any signing decisions? Hogan Tire? Yeah, we'll do that.
Excuse me, folks.
Folks, please, we still have business to attend to. If we could ask you to, thank you. I'm the only one with a microphone, I should use it. I forgot I was holding it.
You have a gavel.
Yeah, well, I have a gavel. I'm loaded with weapons and I didn't use anything. So Abby has a signature page for the Hogan Tire decision.
All right, so I will email you that decision before the weekend. I guess Steve and Mike were not on the Hogan Tire case, but I'll email it to you.
That's right. You
Steve and Todd, and then Steve, Chris, and Trevor, if we can look over at that, all those conditions, so that we can keep that one moving. But here's just, it's really just the signature page. Russ decision still needs to be written. If you don't mind signing that one. Please.
All right. Committee reports. Do we have any?
Committee reports.
Anyone? Anyone?
I have a real quick one I could give. I attended
Borrow your
a
pen.
meeting For the, maybe I'll take, should I take the mic, I guess, so we record this?
Yep, sorry.
I attended a meeting last week of the Regional Transportation Advisory Council, AKA the Advisory Council. There wasn't a lot on the agenda. What was discussed at length was the MBTA's plans to begin implementing a much more sophisticated fare collection system, which was remarkably rather interesting to hear about how they're going to adopt variations of several systems found around the world, which will improve, the theory is it'll improve ridership by offering more ways to pay, more efficient ways to get through turnstiles, more efficient ways to get on buses. So it was, met with general, interest, I guess, of the committee. There wasn't like a decision to be made or anything like that. It was more of a report by the MBTA, and that was the primary focus of the meeting. So.
That was the entire system, rapid transit, buses, and commuter rail?
Yes, basically everything. It's something that the last time they did something like this, it took them 13 years. The commitment is to adopt it. The hope is to move a lot faster than that, probably like the next 4 to 5 years, have something adopted and approved. Obviously, it's costly, but they think the ridership will go up by something like 5 to 10%, which would obviously offset any additional costs they're implementing. So.
And are they including things like you pay by the distance you go?
That wasn't entirely clear to me. I think they're going to study that as kind of a zone system for more components than just the commuter rail. What I think it's focused on is things like being able to pay electronically with your phone or with a tag or with a different kind of card, being able to buy tickets at more places, which is somewhat implemented now, but isn't that successful apparently. And also to set up incentives for, I think, partial like zoning and also time of day. It's hideously complicated, obviously, but it's designed to sort of create more flexible fare schedules and more flexible ability to pay. And
It's mostly how you pay rather more than how much you pay.
I believe so, yeah. Yeah. I'll stop after this. I thought one of the things he did make a point of, which I think was a good one, is that they're not trying to create something custom, which I guess was what they did last time they did this. They're looking around the world, focusing on. He mentioned the system he's in London a lot, which is works very well. To adopt technology that's already been figured out and vetted, rather than trying to create something just for the MBTA, which is great, I think. So.
But then all the buses will be on the wrong side of the road.
Yes, they will be switching the roadway to a British system of driving to the left. So look out for that. Just kidding.
Thank you. Abby, just real quick, have all the new boards committees been notified of the new memberships from our board? Oh, they haven't finalized that? Oh, I thought it was sorry. I thought it was in the last meeting. My apologies.
I just have sort of a report from the Housing Authority. I just wanted to let everybody know that tomorrow, Zoning Board of Appeals is hearing a variance request. Habitat for Humanity, the South Shore Habitat for Humanity, is looking to develop 5 Highview Street to construct a single-family dwelling that will serve a low or moderate income family. And so the Housing Authority met and voted to support that application. And I just wanted to share that information that the Housing Authority and Westwood Affordable Housing Associates believe this is a great opportunity for the community of Westwood to work together to provide a great benefit to the town. And I believe, correct, you know, it's the property is too small, right? It's a non-conforming lot, so it would otherwise be undevelopable. It had tax liens against it. Duncan
McFarland purchased the property. I believe that's right. So that they have filed, Habitat Humanity has filed for a variance, a few variances from the Zoning Board of Appeals.
What's the address?
5 Highview?
5 Highview, there had been a house there for many years, this is at the corner of Burgess and Highview. You might remember, there was a house there that was condemned, a family moved out, and it was left to decay for many years. It went into tax title, the town eventually required its demolition, and then the property was in tax title for long enough that it was put up for auction. Duncan McFarland bought it out of the auction and intends to donate it to Habitat for Humanity. Habitat for Humanity is proposing a modest single-family house. If the original house was still standing, then anyone could have purchased it and replaced that house with a new house. Because that house has been gone for more than 2 years, it's considered a non-buildable lot. Once you go beyond 2 years beyond the date of demolition, you don't have the automatic right to redevelop a property. What Habitat for Humanities can do is file a comprehensive permit, a friendly 40B, with the town's support and develop a house there. This is kind of going about it to get to the same end. They're applying for variances instead. They will have to demonstrate hardship to the Zoning Board of Appeals, and the Zoning Board of Appeals will have to determine whether or not to approve that. If for some reason the board chose not to approve it because they were concerned about the hardship concerns, Habitat for Humanity would then file for a comprehensive permit. The zoning board could again choose to approve or not approve that. I think the town would support the approval, and where there's town support, a comprehensive permit application is appealed by the state, and I think they have a 98% approval record. So it's very likely that there'll be an approval, and a single-family house will be built there, one way or the other.
Okay. Thank you.
I also like to report the State Senate passed the zoning bill, the zoning reform bill. So it's on to the House now. This is the furthest it's ever gone. Well, it's never even made it to either House ever before. So it passed. Senate voted favorably on it last week. As you recall, we've number of times over the years this board has voted to recommend that zoning reform bill be adopted.
Closer now. Okay. Anything else to discuss on other topics? Abby, you had sent an email out about Walpole.
Yeah, you did receive some hearing notices. Yeah, we got a couple in Walpole. Just
And
like
Canton
posted.
also?
Yep, there was one in Canton. I don't remember what it was, but Walpole is getting a new police station, also a new fire station as well. And then that hearing was this week, I think, the Walpole one.
Okay.
And did you hear anything about Norwood on Everett Street?
I'm going to call them. I haven't seen anything on that. I don't know. Steve was asking what's happening on Everett Street before you get in Norway, just over the westward line. I wasn't sure what was happening.
By Progressive?
No, Hoffman's property.
Oh.
His house has been torn
Yeah,
down.
yes,
And it's being leveled, and
Don't the son still own it?
and
No, it's
and,
daughters.
No idea.
Daughters?
His
That
daughter
was a contended will.
was living across the street, actually.
Yeah.
Was living on that side of it. But someone that told me that they might be just, for the auto mile, just parking more cars there, more automobile storage. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's what I was told.
Was there something being built on Clapboard Tree? Where to describe this? Right before the churches, the First Parish, or the Greek church? It looked like there's a new driveway cut in.
Talking the bean problem?
No, not the
They just
beans,
put
not the
I know
beans.
what you mean. They added, it's that bigger lot if you're driving toward Pond Street on the right, right? There's like a
Right, if you
gravel-
leave First Parish and you're going on Clapboard Tree towards the synagogue, it's on your right. And it looks like a new driveway had been put in and they've cleared land to build something.
The Pink House lot was subdivided several years ago.
Okay, well, that's before me.
So the house.
They're finally building on it?
They may be building.
Yeah.
No, that's not something that we're.
Something's going on there.
Residential construction on the.
It's right before you get to that brook. There's a big transformer, on the left, and it's on the opposite side of the street.
I think they cut that lot into 3 lots, if I
Oh.
remember. It's an A&R lot.
Hmm.
So I would imagine
I meant to
it's
ask
one
you,
of those.
or somebody, the question. I didn't realize it had already gone through the process. They just sat on it.
I haven't seen it. Abby, did you get a request for approval?
And the subdivision we did at Skyline, was that Skyline, just recently?
Far Reach Road?
Far Reach, not Skyline, sorry. They haven't done anything with that?
I've been meaning to check in with them.
I noticed the for sale sign is still on the lot.
I believe they may have applied to this Conservation Commission to develop the individual lots.
Oh.
Or first step. before
Yes,
they-
because they needed to do that.
They seem to have been chomping at the bit when they were before us, so to still see the for sale sign up seemed a little odd to me, so I thought I'd ask.
Want more?
Do I want? I don't know.
Last meeting, I mentioned the Canton Street corridor for the interchange project, and I gave you the wrong number. It was, the last price was 53 million, but they recalculated, and I'm still trying to verify some of these numbers. But so on the 2015 tip, it was advertised for the 53 million, but now they need more, so they're putting an addition onto the amendment to the 2016 tip for another 16.8 million, and that'll be before the MPO Thursday.
But that's still an estimate, not a bid price.
And that's what they budget, which is what they estimate it to be. They still have not opened the bids, so they do not have the actual bid amount, right? But they are.
They never get built. Okay, approval of minutes.
I make a motion to approve the minutes from the meeting of May 24th, 2016.
So, second, and so in there, I did say, I think I said 42 million, it should be 53 million, right there.
Do we have a motion and a second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Abby, we're scheduled into December, right?
Yes.
Should make a note on your personal calendars that those started at 7:30, now they're at 7 from here on out. If you don't have that in your phone already or on your computer. And there's an Islington Task Force on the 22nd. We cannot, no more than one of us can go in addition to Trevor, right?
Trevor's the chairman of that committee, so
Right.
one other member can go. Let Abby know if you're interested in going, so she can make sure that you don't violate the open meetings law, or you can schedule as a planning board meeting and you can all attend, so.
That's next Wednesday.
That's next Wednesday. What they're going to do on Wednesday is a walking tour of Islington Center, which I think may be of interest to all of you if you are interested in doing it. You can post it as a planning board meeting. After the walking tour, there will be limited discussion. We'll hear, I think you all received a copy of a petition that went around, so there'll be a little bit of discussion on that. The task force members will receive copies of the proposal for the Islington Center properties. Those proposals are due on Monday the 20th, so we'll have them by then and we'll distribute them, but they won't discuss them at that meeting. They'll set a date for another meeting to discuss them. And then we'll hear from any residents about any issues, any questions or comments related to Islington Center. But the beef of the meeting will be a walking tour.
Related to Islington, how's the fire station going? Any more hiccups there?
It's progressing. I think we're still estimating that construction will continue through the end of this year. Could be longer, but we're hopeful that it'll be done and that the fire department can move in the beginning of 2017.
I don't want to belabor that meeting, but what are the hiccups been? I've been getting questions like, what's going on? It seems like they're not doing any work.
They are doing work. They're at the point now where there are multiple building trades that are there and they have to coordinate their time. They fell behind by several months at the beginning of the process, mainly due to, I'd say, ineffective management. But they've been progressing. Things seem to be going well now. It's an awkward part where everyone can't be working in the same place at the same time. So the guys working on the steel can't be anybody under them. So they need to space out the work. So it looks like it's moving at a snail's
Well, I think they
pace.
capped off today, the steel, I think the steel's
I
pretty
think
much
they might have
done.
finished it today. I
Yeah.
saw them working on the tower. So things should quicken after that, because now multiple
Trades
subcontractors
can
can
be
work at
working,
the same
right.
time.
And Abby sent out an email about July 1st groundbreaking for the police
For
station.
the police station, yes, you're all invited, encouraged to attend.
I am unable to go,
And
Hopefully
if you're
in town.
interested, just a real quick update, the Deerfield Avenue extension was bid out in advance of the police station, and all the work is completed except for the very final landscaping and the top coat of pavement. The only thing holding up the top coat of pavement is a utility pole smack dab in the middle of the new Deerfield Avenue extension. So we've been trying to get that moved by Eversource. It was complicated because it had to be moved onto property of Westwood Glen Apartments, which was owned by Equity Real Estate, but was recently sold. They have a new owner. And Verizon also had to sign off on it, so Eversource had to work with Verizon, get their signature, work with Equity. In the meantime, Equity sold it, so it goes back to Verizon, change the documents, have them sign it, now it goes to the new owner. So we're very close. We're so close to getting it done. But the road, although it's ready to open, it can't open because there's a pole in the middle. So we hope to have that road finished in time for the bulk of the police station construction so that it won't be inconvenient to anybody. But
it's like the movie Up.
we're not there yet. We're almost
The house
there.
that can't be sold. Okay, I think that's it.
I have one more
Oh,
thing.
that's not it.
The approval from your last meeting on the Blue Heart Tavern being moved. I was trying to coordinate a time if any of you members want to go visit and document the property before it's moved. I heard from Dave, but I didn't know if anyone else was available.
I didn't see that request.
When's the?
Sorry.
Well,
No.
did you got it? I got an email. I think I sent it in an email, probably a little while ago.
Sorry.
We didn't get it.
There was
I
something at
didn't
the bottom of your memo about it.
Right, and
Just-
I think it was in one of my emails, it may have been a couple weeks ago. But I was trying to coordinate some time also with the Historic Commission. So I can follow up, or if anyone wants to let me know if you have any times in the next week or so.
Wouldn't it be better to come up with one time and see if we can arrange our schedules to do that?
We never.
I mean,
It's been
you
hard, I
shouldn't
know.
do 5 separate
It's been
tours.
really hard.
No.
Every time let's say, I know I've heard from, Giorgio, the applicant, just said to, give him a couple times, we could, meet.
When are we
What
talking?
about,
This week? Next week? Month?
Next week, that application is before the zoning board tomorrow night, so after that, maybe we can move forward.
Yeah, move it.
So, I don't know, if Peter from the Historic Commission had suggested, next Thursday night, the 23rd,
Oh, nighttime?
at 6, I know that.
Well, it's till daylight out at 6.
Yeah, 6, or,
It's the longest night of the year.
or
The 23rd.
June
28th
22nd,
at
23rd.
6.
It'll be
The longest
perfect.
night of the year.
June 30th at 6, but then I know Dave had mentioned a noon time, maybe better with the traffic. I don't,
Just,
Unless-
6 is probably.
before pedestrian, but 15,
Yeah, I can't do the 30th, but don't go by me. If I'm available, I'll go.
Yeah, if I'm available, I may go.
Pick a time and I'll do what I can. That's
So
what I
what
would.
about, next Thursday, is the 23rd at 6?
It's good for me.
Or, place for the 18th?
I'm not sure if I'm gonna be at that
Oh,
meeting.
okay.
Tough for
Oh, yeah,
me.
you might not
I
be
might be
there.
able to do it, but I don't know. But again, don't go by me. It's fine.
Steve, 23rd? All right, we're gonna go for that.
Just go with that one.
Yeah.
I don't think you're gonna.
Can't move heaven and earth.
All right. You can't move a building.
Is that everything? Motion to adjourn?
I make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second the motion to adjourn.
In favor? Aye.
Aye.
We're out. Finally turn this.